The House will come to order. Conference Committee reports on House files.
Conference can report on House File number 1141, an act relating to housing. The report is addressed to the Honorable Lisa M. Damath, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 1141, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 4 of the 4 members of the House and signed by 2 of the 3 members of the Senate. Howard moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 1141 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by conference.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As I said when this bill left the House, this is a good bill that's going to do a ton of good for Minnesotans, and I think this is now a great bill that's going to do a great deal of good for Minnesotans. It's going to help us build thousands of new homes across the state, keep thousands of Minnesotans safe in their homes, and improve the collaboration and transparency between the legislature and the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, all in a budget-neutral manner for this in the next budget term. I'm going to do my thank yous now because there are many, and they are thank yous, but it's also just with deep pride. I am so proud to be part of Team Housing with our incredible members and staff, including Benji Brinks, Molly Peterson from our partisan team, Katrina Highmark and Justin Cope on our nonpartisan team, and Jonathan Smith, our committee legislative assistant, and to the Republican staff as well. Team Housing has been working so well together to do amazing work and have fun doing it this year. I also want to thank Commissioner Ho and her team at MHFA. This bill took a lot of work and collaboration. It's better because of their work. And I want to thank advocates and Minnesotans across the state that brought their concerns and issues to the Capitol and have put us in this great place to pass this good bill. And I know we're not supposed to mention the other body, but I also want to express deep gratitude to Chair Lindsay Port for her work on this bill to make change, and not just make change in the Capitol, but change how we talk about housing in this body, in this state, and make housing a priority that we know we can't leave these doors without addressing. That's happened because of our work, not just this year, but in years past. So members, this is a very similar bill to the bill that passed the House with 99 votes. So let's see if we can get to 100. The key highlights were making meaningful investments to build more homes, as I mentioned, over 2,000 units, both to rent and to own, largely through housing infrastructure bonds and greater Minnesota workforce housing, as well as manufactured housing investments. We're making significant investments in FHPAP, our bread and butter trusted program to help both renters and homeowners who have fallen behind to keep them stable in their home and back on their feet. This will help thousands of Minnesotans in all 87 counties. And as I mentioned, we're doing this in a budget-neutral way by looking at the MHFA's current interest earnings and working on ways that we can make transfers between those funds and make sure that this is done in a budget-neutral way. We also include a set of fiscal reforms. They look largely similar to those when we passed the House. I would say that I think they're more effective and even stronger based on our collaboration with the Senate and MHFA as well. The differences on the investment side, we've added $4 million in manufactured housing investment grants. That's something we heard in our debate on a bipartisan basis of a need and desire, and so we've added manufactured housing investments. We've also included an additional $4 million for supportive housing. We have talked about this issue. A lot of our supportive housing providers have had the rug pulled out from them by the federal government. This is going to provide investments to make sure that they're safe and stable, at least getting through this calendar year. So those are some of the key investments we've made that are different. We didn't bring in many Senate provisions. So Manufactured Housing Bill of Rights, the ban on private equity homes, I think a lot of members on our side would have liked to see those come in, but they did not in conference committee. We did accept a provision regarding more transparency and public access during MHFA board meetings. as well as a bipartisan provision that had passed the Senate floor, giving local governments the option to make investments in fixed income funds that ultimately lead to more housing development. So those are the key pieces of the bill. I think I'll have more comments on when we get to third reading, but we've done something really special here with our bipartisan work. So my last thank you is to Co-Chair Igo for this great bipartisan work. We're showing that in our tied House, we can take action in a real meaningful way that's going to make a difference in all of our districts, whether they're blue or red. And so it's a great bill. I think all of us can be proud of supporting. I know I am.
Further discussion on the motion to adopt the conference committee report. I recognize a member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
I guess it's yeah, we can vote green to adopt this. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee report signify by saying aye. Any opposed say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will report the bill.
Third reading, House File Number 1141, as amended by conference.
Third reading. Discussion. I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Kozlowski.
Thank you, Speaker and members. I am just really thrilled to be standing here with House File 1141 back before us, and I think better shape than when we passed it last week. As you hear me keep saying, you know, housing really is a human right, and in the wealthiest country on earth, at a time when Minnesotans are struggling so much and working hard, nobody should be working a full-time job and still not being able to afford a home here in Minnesota, skipping meals to make rent, or freezing through a Minnesota winter without a home. The reality, as we have been talking about, is that you need to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to afford a modest home in Minnesota. In greater Minnesota alone, unsheltered homelessness has increased by 53%. This is really not a personal failure. These are policy and systems failures. And I am so proud of the work that we are doing to bring forward policy solutions and changes to make a better future for housing in Minnesota. This bill, as Chair Howard talked about, invests $100 million in housing infrastructure bonds and $20 million in workforce housing. That's going to build and preserve housing across the state. That's home for nurses, teachers, for childcare workers, manufacturers, and the people who are really making Minnesota run every day. In Duluth alone, I talked to one manufacturer. They turned away 35 employees because they couldn't find housing within a 30-mile radius of our community. Think about that. That is choking our workforce, choking our economy, and blocking people out from the communities that they love. I wanted to highlight that in previous investments with these funds, for example, in War Road, a single 65-unit development generated more than $121,000 in property taxes. And up north, it had turned vacant lots, underutilized spaces, and turned that into senior housing with childcare right on site. This bill also, I'm really proud of the investments, and huge thanks to Senator Port for your leadership in the investments for HECAT, our first-generation home buyers program that's going to get more first-gen home buyers into a home and also prevent evictions and keep them in their houses. One of the biggest barriers that we have to closing that racial home ownership gap is being able to give the tools for folks to be able to go through the financial counseling process, to everything that it takes to get into a home and stay there. And I will just say that I am also disappointed that this bill is coming back without private equity or the manufactured components, as we've heard that a lot of Minnesotans feel trapped in their communities or boxed out, and we're seeing that with corporate home ownership gobbling up homes that should be in the hands of people and Minnesotans and not corporations. One resident we heard in testimony in a conference committee said, you know, this used to be a place I love and now it's just a place I live and feel trapped. This bill injects that $4 million for supportive housing. As I mentioned, that's really important for greater Minnesota. I shared this story yesterday in committee that we had a teacher, Emily, who had a student walking down the street, and she said, you know, hey, you know, I noticed you got your garbage bag. Do you need a ride home from school? And that student's mom and siblings actually came out of the bushes because they were fleeing domestic violence and had to leave home that day. And the nearest shelter that that educator was able to get them connected with housing supports was over 2 hours away down south in North Branch. And so the reality of our homelessness system in greater Minnesota is already stretched and strained. And we know that with the injection of what we did at the legislature is going to preserve those 3,000 beds and units. But those aren't just units. Those are, those are lives. And I just wanted to honor that in this year alone, we've lost another couple hundred Minnesotans. Brad, 44, Mark, who's 63, Jay, 49, Izzy, 39 years old, my big brother, Stephen Nelson, 38. These are the working poor, deaths that were due to homelessness, overdoses, and housing instability. And it really doesn't have to be that way. And that's why just the last thing I want to hit on is how proud I am of this FHPAP funding that is going to go to all 87 counties and 10 tribal nations. And it's going to keep people housed and make sure that these systems, that folks aren't falling through the cracks. And that's also why the funding for Homeline and the tenant hotline is so important. These dollars that are coming from the Tyler Settlement Fund, and Miss Tyler, a black woman from Minneapolis who had her home unjustly taken, is going to allow us to rewrite that history for Minnesota. And just lastly, I'll say that it takes a lot of EQ and IQ to get to where we are today with this bill. And so to Chairs Igo and Howard, to every single member of Team Housing, to our staff, but also I want to send a special thank you to Commissioner Ho and the MHFA team, who I've had the privilege of working with and getting a chance to really be mentored under your leadership, which has been legendary for the investments in Minnesota. So thank you. This bill is going to mean that less Minnesotans are sleeping in cars and out in the cold, and more Minnesotans who are staying in our workforce, kids in our schools, out of our hospitals and ERs. And let it be known today that we believe every single Minnesotan deserves a safe, stable, affordable place to call home. And I hope that this is the easiest vote of your life, and let's get to 100 plus. Vote green.
I recognize a member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to show a difference in leadership. It was just 2 years ago that this body irresponsibly spent an $18 billion budget surplus and threw money at this black hole and of the realm of housing, where money has literally just sat for the last several years within the Minnesota Housing Finance Authority, not benefiting Minnesotans, and in fact, in a lot of ways, just enriching government. That's what happens when you give the keys of state government to one party, particularly the Democratic Party here in Minnesota, who appears to have a lack of a desire to protect taxpayers. But fortunately, we have a different result today and this biennium, a more responsible approach to governance, and much thanks to the work of Republican members of the Housing Committee, and especially and including Representative Igo, there are provisions within this bill that protect taxpayers. Instead of growing and enlarging government, specifically more staff at state agencies, and growing it with the money from interest from taxpayers, from money that was put into a fund that instead of helping Minnesotans was just growing government. This is a positive step because of that reason, Mr. Speaker, and it wouldn't have happened without Republicans being at the table to be more responsible with taxpayer money. And it's incredibly important that we stop the growth of government, because during the Walz administration, the state government has grown by 45%. 45%. And that is a cost that every Minnesota taxpayer fronts, that we have to pay for irresponsible government that has been at the tip of the spear in nation-leading fraud. And so today, Mr. Speaker, while this bill has some good things, it has some additional spending that we shouldn't see, we really need to remember the true priorities of Minnesotans and what they sent us here for this year. Minnesotans, I believe, rightly sent the legislature back to work this year, believing that the money that is in the state budget would be put forward to support protecting kids in schools and school safety. And I think we can all, in this moment, appreciate what $165 million would do for school safety. But that's not where this money is going today. It could have gone to additional tools to stop fraud. We know that we do need additional tools. It's why this body passed the Independent Office of Inspector General bill last week. I'm certain, Mr. Speaker, that in the next few days we're going to hear a conversation about asset preservation and core infrastructure needs that Minnesotans expect, that we take care of state assets in addition to our drinking water. And Mr. Speaker, $165 million could go a long way to asset preservation, especially considering the needs. So instead of using the government to build more homes in something that should be left up to the private sector, we could be taking care of our own assets with these resources. And that's not to mention, Mr. Speaker, that we will have a conversation throughout the rest of this week about how to respond to the crisis that has been created in Hennepin County over HCMC. And this bill provides $165 million that's not going to support HCMC or any hospital across this state. So, Mr. Speaker, this is just a matter of priorities on exactly what the state should be doing. We don't have a money tree. We need to be very frugal with taxpayer money and to ensure that we're protecting their money that they send when they pay their taxes. And ultimately, Mr. Speaker, I know that as we soon return to the campaign trail and talk to Minnesotans across the state, they're going to tell us that their number one concern is their own family budget and lowering costs for them. So, Mr. Speaker, when I consider that that the DFL trifecta squandered $18 billion, I'm wondering why the priority today isn't on lowering costs by cutting card tab fees and property taxes and working to lower health insurance. We could be doing that, and the money appropriated in this bill could be doing that. So as we look forward, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we continue to prioritize taxpayers and Minnesotans first, that we look to family budgets and protecting them first, because that is what Minnesotans need overall.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank both chairs. You guys did a great job shepherding this bill from what we crafted through the Senate and back here. A lot of hard work to get to this point. And I think the outcome is really good. The original $20 million for workforce housing got bumped down to 14.5, a little better than 14.5, which is good because some of that money went to manufactured housing, which in my opinion is also workforce housing. So it's still germane for workforce housing. And Greater Minnesota needs a ton of it. We need a lot of it. We need more people doing jobs and finding housing where those jobs are. And after looking at all the crowding that's going on down here, come to Greater Minnesota, we have plenty of room to expand and to grow your businesses. And housing is the #1 issue in most, if not all, of our districts. I think this bill has some milestones for me that we can do. I'm going to see more workers in the district. We're going to see more. And generally speaking, they are Davis-Bacon wages, so it's good wages that are coming to our communities to work on. And, you know, I'm going to let the chairs talk about where the money came from, all the money, the $165 million, where that is and everything about that. But what I see from this committee is bipartisanship works when you want it to work. And it takes effort, it takes work. It's not just given. There's things that happen behind the scenes that the product we're looking at now, we're give and take from both sides. And I'm a firm believer that housing shouldn't be hyper-partisan. Housing is something that we all need, and when we all work together, housing is attainable. It can be done. Sometimes I'm perplexed and I try to see the other side, and sometimes the other side's on my side. Sometimes I have to see, what do you mean by that? Just like with these folks. So I'm hoping that we can keep working in this manner to get more housing on the ground. It's so important for our communities. And with that, I hope everyone has it in them to vote for this bill. It is a good bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So housing prices, the price of a median home went up 38% from 2001 to 2008. Then we had lovely housing crash, which is, I was lucky enough to buy my first home during that period. But once we recovered from that, 2011 to 2022, 92% increase in home prices. 92%. How did that happen? Well, the sad thing is, I would love to just blame Democrats for it, but deliberate government policy to try and make homes affordable had exactly the opposite effect, and it was something that both parties generally supported. We've been juicing demand for housing for years and years and years and years, whether the first-time home buyer credit, zero-interest loans, low-interest loans, the federal rates being kept historically low, and you can really see house prices and interest rates. They go together hand in hand, and interest rates were held so low for so long that people think they're normal. People are flabbergasted at interest rates today, which, if you take a historical look, are much more reasonable what we've seen in the past. So on top of juicing demand with ridiculously low interest rates, handing out money to first-time home buyers and all these things, which these are nice things, and I probably supported many of these things if I was in those positions at the time, but the effect they had was a rapid increase in demand, while at the same time, restrictive zoning practices and increasing code regulations have made homes more and more difficult to build and more expensive through more expensive materials. So we make demand sky high. We make it impossible to build new homes, and then we just dump money into the system to compensate. So now for somebody in Gen Z, buying a home, their own home, is essentially a punchline. It's absurd to think they'll have like 7 times their yearly revenue of the median income to afford a home. So that's where we are, and that's the super cliff notes of how we got here. But I want to thank Representative Howard and Representative Igo. When you look at this bill, it is line after line of attacking the supply side of the problem. It isn't just juicing demand, it is making it easier to build homes, providing money to build homes, opening up new avenues to build homes, making sure agencies aren't hoarding money that could be used to create more opportunities to build homes. It is manufactured housing infrastructure grants, which is another thing that manufactured housing is affordable home, but they have been repeatedly treated like they're essentially a vehicle. There are many impediments to manufactured housing, but when you look at manufactured housing and modular homes, that's a great affordable option we should be incentivizing, and this bill will help maintain our manufactured housing parks. So while we've gotten into this mess through government policy, it seems that the lessons have been learned by the current leadership, and I am thrilled with this bill. It is, you don't often see a bill where, I have no notes. Sure, it could be better, but we live in reality. So I think we've learned our lessons. We have to find out how to move forward, particularly on the restrictive zoning practices. That's a very hot topic of debate, but I would argue it's something that we do need to address. But I want to thank the authors in the House for making sure that the worst of the Senate didn't make it in here and took some good things. And I am just beyond happy with the end result. So thank you, Representative Howard. Thank you, Representative Igo. I would encourage all our members to cast a green vote for this bill.
I recognize a member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the author, so if the good representative would yield for my question.
He will yield. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Howard, I just have a question. In our Cliff Notes here, I have some of the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency FTEs, and I was kind of astounded, but maybe you can correct my astounding revelation that in 10 years, they've had over 100 employees added to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. So in 2016, they had 239. Here it is, 2026. In 10 years, they're up to 328.4 full-time employees. And that seems like a lot for that particular agency. So I just would know if you could respond to that question. How come in 10 years, so many employees would be my question, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Representative McDonald. You know, Minnesota Housing, when you go back 10 years, was a much smaller agency at a time when we weren't focusing on some of the issues that Representative West just raised. And what we've done over the course of the last many years, including 2023, when we made a historic $10 billion, or excuse me, a $1 billion investment that essentially 10x'd our focus on housing, we are absolutely going to have to fund staff to administer those programs. And I would argue that's a good thing. We want our MHFA to have the resources they need to implement programs and implement programs well. You know, a fraud has been a discussion here at the legislature. MHFA is an agency that has not had those issues. They've done a great job with program integrity. And it is true, in 2023, we asked MHFA to do a lot of new things that's doing a lot of new good right now all across our state. So when you look at where our investment trend has been it does track in a reasonable basis where the FTE trend has been as well.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you for that answer, Representative Howard. I do like in your bill, and Representative Igo as well, he mentioned this, that you are holding them accountable as well and just seeing what their budget is and how much the cost to run the programs. I think that's important. Also, for their admin. And then also it says relevant programs that appropriate over 0.25% of the difference must be spent. So I think that's a good provision in there. Could you answer one more question if you'd yield, Representative Howard?
He will continue to yield,
Mr.
Representative
Speaker, and then just
McDonald.
lastly, what is the budget or the amount of those 100 employees? What's that number that we spend FTE? If you don't have that number off the top of your head, that's fine.
Representative Howard.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have that exact number. I can work with our staff and with MHFA to get you more specific details.
Representative McDonald.
That's fine. I'll get that later from you. I'll see you later today. But just in closing, Mr. Speaker, it does seem excessive. Perhaps it's right. As we continue to tackle affordability and homelessness, we recognize, I believe, that it takes employees, good, able-bodied, good people to do good work in Minnesota. It just does seem excessive, over 100 employees in 10 years. If that's in a business, in the private sector, that's a good thing because they're growing and they're making money and they're putting people to work and they're paying taxes. So that's a good thing. In this particular case, it seems as though it might be excessive, but I'll continue to do my homework, Representative Howard, and maybe it's worth every penny of 100 employees in the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I just want to talk a little bit about what we need to start doing when it comes to evaluating the definition of home ownership. Right now, it's around $438,000 is the median home price throughout the nation. I know it's a little bit lower here in Minnesota, but that's absolutely ridiculous. If you take a look at the trend line, it's growing at an exponential rate that simply crowds out the market for anybody in my generation. We have a median first-time home ownership age of 39 years old. It's incredible. Nearly 40 years old. And that's when you first own your home. We have corporate hedge funds that are outbidding young families who are trying to purchase that first home, which only drastically increases the median home price. We need to redefine what affordable housing means, because I think we throw that around quite flippantly, and it doesn't mean a $2,600 per month rent in a 400-plus unit mass development that out-of-state developers quickly throw up at the street corner. I've lived in those. I didn't call it home. Called it my apartment or where we were at for the time being, but I didn't see it as a home. Single-family homes need to be Minnesota's bread and butter. They need to be our #1 priority when it comes to housing in future work. And while I do see some positive signs of that being made easier to build, to afford here in Minnesota, it still misses the mark to some extent in my mind. The American dream is predicated on the idea that you can afford a home. And without that, the #1 asset, the #1 wealth-growing asset, we're going to leave a lot of families behind. But I want to thank both the chairs for their work and appreciate it.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first thank Chair Igo and Chair Howard for this bill. I am so excited to get to vote for it. You know, members, we're here to make Minnesotans' lives better. And housing is so critical to that. Housing is a foundation for a successful life here in Minnesota. You know, it's hard to get a job without a home. It's hard for kids to focus in school if they don't have a stable place to lay their heads at night. And it's hard to heal if you don't have a stable place to sleep at night as well. Housing is one of the top things I hear about from constituents in my district, and the effects from not having a home. Actually, so HCMC is in my district. One of the top reasons that people are in the emergency room are the impacts from not having stable housing. So when we make these types of investments, critical ways to have supportive housing to get those wraparound services that people need, people who may just be down on their luck, but may also need services for substance abuse or mental health issues or other health issues that they need those additional services. So I'm so excited to see that supportive housing funding in here. I'm also thrilled to see money for new housing. As has been said on the other side, and thank you to Representative West and others who've talked about the need for more supply. We simply just don't have enough homes, enough roofs with beds underneath them for every Minnesotan to have a stable place to live. And so this will help address that issue. Next, I want to talk about the FHPAP. This I've heard so much from folks in my community, the need for the ability for people to stay in their homes. Sometimes people just need that extra little bump for a couple of months so they can get at that next job, so they could just make it through that little tough issue so they can stay in their homes. I also want to say Homeline. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad to see Homeline in here. So I used to be on my neighborhood association board, and my district is overwhelmingly renter. And people would come to us and say, like, I'm having a problem in my rental situation. Like, what can you do? And we're a neighborhood board. We're a small nonprofit. We don't know. Having Homeline to be a resource for them was such a godsend. And then I do have to mention, the one thing I'm disappointed in is the lack of land use reform in here. I guess actually Representative Schultz mentioned that the private industry has a role to play in our housing market. I 100% agree with that. And if we can make it easier from a governmental perspective for the private industry to get more involved in housing and help us build more homes, I think the more Minnesotans will thrive. So again, thank you so much to the co-chairs, and I look forward to a very green board today.
I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start with some thank yous first. There was a lot of work that went into the conference committee report that we have in front of us today. So to all staff, to our partisan staff, thank you. But to our nonpartisan, they need all the thanks in the world for all the hard work they put in for us. There's provisions in this bill that are brand new and are going to be brand new in state government. And those don't just come out of thin air. Those come out of the work of legislators spending countless hours with nonpartisan staff and reviewing laws and rules about how to do things. And we came up with some really good measures. So thank you to all of them. Like was said, this bill is a result of fantastic collaboration. And I want to start with just thanking my co-chair and committee members, my Senate counterparts. It's working on policy like this is why I'm so proud to be a legislator, and I think this is one of the highlights that I will remember, that we were able to go into a room and negotiate on things that some things we stand very far apart on, and it's hard to have that conversation. But the best thing about what we were able to do in housing is we can have that conversation. We can have it in a very civil way. We can listen to each other and hear the good and the bad to both things we're presenting. And at the end of the day, we left with a bill that's going to help every single Minnesotan, regardless if they're here in St. Paul or if they're up on the Iron Range back home by me. And that is something that I think all Minnesotans want to see in their state government. I'm really proud to hear all the support on both sides for land use and zoning. It hurts me that it's not in this bill today. But it's right. I mean, when we talk about, it was said earlier on the floor about how we need to do things to get money back and, we need to return tax dollars, and that's true. The best way to do that is fix the problem that we have, that we need 100,000 homes in the state of Minnesota. People want to live here, raise families here, and thrive here, but they don't have a home to live here. And if we opened up our communities to be able to build the homes that the next generation wants, the issues of school district funding, the issues of city funding, the issues of having more small business, of having more vibrant communities, evaporates as we build more homes. So I hope that the conversation we're having on the floor today, and I'm so glad that land use and zoning got brought up, because when we go home to our districts this summer, and when you're all out door knocking, listen to those under the age of 40, because their number one issue is asking for a place to call home. And there is a bill getting worked here at the legislature, and I encourage you to call myself, Representative Howard, Representative Jones, Representative Nash. There's a really great bipartisan team here that wants to welcome you to be a part of this push to get it done next year. Back to the bill itself, it really does focus on just about every little thing we need. It's focusing on supply, but it's also focusing on taking care of some of Minnesota's most vulnerable, which doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, we're here to help you. FHPAP is the proven way of helping people when they need it most. And I'm proud to be in a state that we have a program that when people are going through a hard time, regardless of what the situation may be, we step in to help them so they don't fall. That's something I think every Minnesotan should be proud of. The manufactured homes bill language in here is critically important to fixing up these manufactured home parks that need it, that are the core principles of some of our most affordable home ownership options in the state of Minnesota. There's a fantastic small provision in here authored by my seatmate here, Representative Zalesnikar, that is working on a home share senior pilot program that's going to take rural counties and metro counties and find ways to collaborate where seniors can open up their homes for collaborative living experiences. It's going to open up more units of housing and give higher quality of life to our seniors. There's money in here for homeownership education so that we give young people trying to afford homes or trying to stay out of bankruptcy options the coaching that they need to be able to find those homeownership options. It's just a very encompassing and broad bill tied together with really good checks and balances that we did in collaboration with the State Housing Agency. That we're going to make sure that the dollars earned there in interest stay in taxpayer apportioned programs. That we're going to focus on housing infrastructure bonds that are going to be in places like Thief River Falls or in Hastings and are going to build the workforce housing, the multifamily, the single family homes all across the state that people are crying out for. We're coupling it with new investments. That was mentioned earlier, the ability for these cities of AA rated to invest and work with the trades and to build out the housing, again, that people want. It's really hard to not look at this bill and just be incredibly proud of it because I see fingerprints on it, not just from my bipartisan group that worked in this conference committee, but every member of this legislature. Because when you work on housing, you go through the spreadsheets and you see where money's been appropriated, I see the city's name on there, but I know exactly whose district that is. It's Representative West's district. It's Representative Kraft's district. Because everybody in this chamber and in the other chamber across the hall has their fingerprints in this bill and how their districts are going to benefit. So again, I hope we can get a really green board on this bill today. It's going to go to uplift every single Minnesotan, but closing the work is not done. And again, I encourage all of you as you're back home, think about and work on this land use and zoning issue so we can bring it back next year and open up that private market that was said earlier to fix the supply problem for the demand that people want to live in Minnesota and raise families. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just a few comments about the debate before a few final words. You know, Representative Schultz mentioned that, you know, we ought to be focusing on affordability here. Well, what's the number one affordability issue that every family has? It's the cost of their home. It's the cost of their home. And to pretend that we don't have a role here to play to make that number one affordability squeeze better for Minnesota families, for me, is just putting our head in the sand. And that's the opposite of what we've done the last several years with our investments in housing and the opposite of what we're doing in this bill. And as folks mentioned, Representative West mentioned it very well, the root cause of our affordability challenge in the state of Minnesota is a supply-demand mismatch. And we need to find a way to use every lever we can to build more homes. In this bill, we're doing so where the private market is failing. That's another thing that Representative Schultz mentioned. We have to let the private market do this. Well, there's a lot of ways and a lot of areas all across the state where the private market is not building homes. That's the Greater Minnesota Workforce Program. What we hear time and time again all across Greater Minnesota is that we need housing for our workers, but the deals don't pencil out. We can't make a deal work without some public investment. And they're right. And I think that we should make those public investments so that we're not shutting out entire areas of the state for the need to build more homes. And our investments in housing infrastructure bonds, our state's bread and butter tool, will help build more homes, both to rent and to own. We've talked about affordable home ownership in ways that, but for a public investment, these homes would not be built. Public investment is a key, important strategy to address our housing shortage, along with reforms that we need to work on next year. It's just the fact. The second thing I want to raise, there was a discussion about FTEs at MHFA and some discussion about MHFA. I want to be clear. I think our Minnesota Housing Finance Agency is one of, if not the best housing finance agency in the country. A lot of states that have housing finance agencies think of themselves merely as a bank. And over time, our housing finance agency has grown to have a larger role in implementing state programs that we, the legislature, because our constituents have said are important, our needs. And we have amazing staff at MHFA implementing programs, and their work over the past many years have led to tens of thousands of homes and tens of thousands improved lives. And I actually believe this bill strengthens that relationship by making sure we in the legislature have a little better line of sight to that good work that's happening at our state housing finance agency. And that's a good long-term win in this bill. A few comments to close. I am immensely proud of this bill, because it brings the level of urgency that I think we need to this issue, because that's what Minnesotans are asking us for. In all of our districts, we have Minnesotans who are deciding whether they are going to buy their groceries or make rent, whether to have a medical appointment or make their mortgage, trying to decide if they're going to have the ability if they need to take on another shift just to make rent, or they're one bad break away from falling in that housing crisis that upends their whole life and their families. 600,000 plus Minnesotans are living that world in our state right now. They cannot afford their homes. That is an urgent, pressing desire for them, for so many of our constituents, and it's incumbent on us to be responsive with that same level of urgency. And so despite a tied legislature, despite a challenging budget outlook, we have found a creative way to make incredible, impactful choices to make home a reality for more Minnesotans. And that's the thing I want to leave us with, is we have that choice. We could choose to say that housing is something that's out of our control. That's a choice that I think many years ago legislatures and governments made. This was an act that happened in the private sector wholly. It wasn't something that we needed to have an eye on. We're just going to let the housing play out. It's a complicated thing. We don't have control of it. But the reality is, we as government made choices to get us into this mess, to get us into one of the worst housing shortages in the country. And we can make choices like we're going to make today to put us on the course to make Minnesota a state where everyone can afford a place called home. And we can make those choices together on this side of the aisle and yours. So this is an incredible, important choice that we can make to say yes to homes. And I hope we keep choosing to say yes to homes in future years. Thank you. Vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Engen. Engen. Hudson.
Hudson votes aye.
Hudson votes aye. Momani Hiltzley.
Momani Hiltzley, aye.
Momani Hiltzley votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye. Engen.
One more time.
Engen.
Put him on speaker.
Oh,
Engen votes no.
Engen votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 105 yeas and 28 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to. Messages from the Senate.
Messages from the Senate. I hereby announce the Senate accedes to the request of the House for the appointment of a conference committee on amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House file. House File Number 3426, an act relating to natural resources. The Senate has appointed as such committee Senators Herr, McEwen, Kunish, and Westrom. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodden, Secretary of the Senate. Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate accedes to the request of the House for the appointment of a conference committee on amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House file. House File Number 4252, an act relating to higher education. The Senate has appointed as such committee Senators Fateh, Verbaeten, Putnam, and Duckworth. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodden, Secretary of the Senate.
Further messages from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate File Number 3891, an act relating to agriculture. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodden, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate bills.
First reading of Senate File Number 3891, an act relating to agriculture, allowing eggs to be donated past their quality assurance date. Myers move that Senate File Number 3891 and House File Number 3579, now on the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Seeing no objection, so ordered. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4074. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 4074, an act relating to retirement, the second engrossment.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today we have the pension bill before you. I'm kind of going to start with the end of the story a little bit for a second. I kind of got inspired during the housing debate, but we had an amazing session last year in the pension space, and So honestly, I didn't expect to be able to do much this year. But my partner, and I mean this sincerely, O'Driscoll and I were able to do some amazing work with our pension team and the leaders of this body. I suppose you're not supposed to be positive in the political world we live in, but Stevenson and Damath were able to deliver with Torgelson and Frazier came through, and we were able to do some really darn amazing work in this space. And I just, people say that we're not able to do things in this divided government, and clearly last year in pensions and this year, it's an amazing bill. So I'm going to start off and just kind of give you a high overview of what's in there, and then other members will probably speak, and we have a couple amendment kind of things. So the St. Paul teachers, we were able to catch them up. Last year we passed provision for TRA, and then this year we were able to do some good work on the St. Paul teachers to get them to matching, so that teachers across the board are at the same rate of pay that they're paying in for the pensions. And so that's a huge step and a great fix that we're able to do. Police and fire, we were able to reduce the waiting period. It doesn't sound like much, but if you're a police and firefighter in Minnesota, you had to wait 2 years for your COLA increase, and we're able to reduce that down to 1 year to buy that down. And that's just huge. It makes a big difference to a retiree. We all see what costs are doing out there in the real world, and so we're able to buy that down, and it's exciting. Last year we started, there was a need in the 911 I can't say the word, telecommunication folks and probation workers and correction workers in the state of Minnesota. And so we were concerned that we heard some of the voices from them that their needs were not being met, and they wanted something done with their retirement age. So in this bill, off of that working group, it goes to prove that legislatures can do working groups, have successful outcomes, and then so we're able to come out and we're starting up a whole entire new plan for these workers. These are tough jobs. Think of a probation officer that goes into a home and, on their own. So we're able to reduce their age for retirement from 60 to 55. And there's a lot more things, but I'm just kind of giving a high overview. So they've been working on this for decades. So to be able to do this is actually historic, and it'll make a huge difference in life of these workers. Kind of transitioning out of some of the bigger things. This bill includes a variety of other things, and one of them is we needed a fix for the State Board of Investments. And Chair Claiborne, thank you, and for your hard work, and Chair Nash, we're able to incorporate that into this bill. And if you ever have an opportunity to realize the level of responsibility that Ms. Schertz and her team do with the State Board of Investments, protecting all the workers and these funds, it's amazing. So thank you again, Chair Claiborne and Chair Nash, for your hard work on, and then we incorporated that in there in our bill. I just kind of want to mention there's people in this space that I just kind of hit me all of a sudden. I want to mention also like the PRA folks that watch over these funds, do an amazing work. MSRS people watching these funds, TRA, watching all the important funds for teachers, St. Paul teachers. But these are people that are behind the scenes that we just really don't ever recognize, and just incredible work. So kind of we notice again that there's some problems that we need to address in this space going into the future. So with the leadership of Representative Johnson and Senator Seeberger, we're going to start up a working plan for trying to figure out a way to help out medical providers and the fire relief associations and trying to figure out a way, for volunteer firefighters and other. So we're doing this working group because there's a lot of people out there doing EMS work and other things that currently are not covered in the local pension plans. We had an opportunity to visit with Representative Backer. He's not on the floor right now, but that guy's a hero. He's out there, and I think he said he makes like $30 a call. So there's things that we can do more to help in this space, and hopefully this working group comes up with something really solid. And so I'm really excited to see what the outcome is. We also, last year, we worked on this duty disability issue. And so with that, we're, thank you, Representative Steer, and the whole committee, and we're working on a study group a working group that's gonna work on figuring out the real solution for duty disability. And I think other members are gonna talk about that some more today, so we'll go into that. There's little things in the bill too. Maple Plain, for example, is shutting down their volunteer fire system. So we helped up those folks there. Chair Robbins, if she was here, she'd be patting us all on the back. But we kind of figured that out. And last year, we started Senator Pappas and Representative Doe started the secure choice. Now, this doesn't sound like, it kind of sounds like a nothing burger, but for the people that it impacts, there's a lot of people in our state that don't have access to a pension or a retirement system through their work. So with the leadership of Senator Pappas and Nadeau, we started that. And then, I mean, there's some amazing, great successes in that space. So just kind of a high-level overview. And I even dressed up today for y'all. I hope you appreciate it. And but no, this is great. And I'm just really proud of the work that our team was able to do in this divided government. And it's just, it's really an incredible bill. We have a couple amendments, Mr. Speaker, if I think now would be probably a good time.
There's an amendment at the desk. The Chief Clerk will report the amendment.
Lillie moves to amend House Bill number 4074, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A9.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate made a few technical changes. It's not of substance. So just technical, and then there will be an amendment to this too that we have, we noticed one more typo, so appreciate your support.
There's an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The Chief Clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Lillie moved to amend his amendment to House File number 4074, the second engrossment. The amendment to the amendment is coded A10.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Again, it's just the first one was technical, and then we did notice one more mistake, and it's actually really funny if you get it and look at it. It's so small, but out of a 175 page bill, it's amazing that the staff was even able to catch that. But appreciate your support.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I encourage a yes vote on the amendment to the amendment that Representative Lillie offered. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment to the amendment is adopted. Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Again, it's really exciting given this times. Please seriously take a look at the bill. There's something for every, it's very labor employee, supporting the state workers all over the state, county, city. It's an incredible bill. So I'm going to step down, and hopefully other members have something to say. Hopefully it's good.
Any further discussion on the adoption of the A10 amendment? I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I encourage a yes vote on the amended amendment. This does clean up language that was taken care of in the Senate Finance Committee. On the pensions bills, we always try to keep them exactly the same going through the House and the Senate to avoid a conference committee, and this will help us in that endeavor to avoid a conference committee with the Senate because of adopting identical language. So again, members, I encourage a yes vote.
Any further discussion on the amendment, the A10 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Lillie moves to amend House File Number 4074, the second Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded 3A.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's probably sorry about my speech. I thought we were going into, but the 3A amendment, we're hoping to have some discussion today. There's some, we're doing the duty disability study, and so there's some members that'd like to have some discussion about that, you know, there might be other paths and solutions. So I believe Representative O'Driscoll would like to speak, and Representative Steer and perhaps Representative Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a very serious issue. We have the duty disability in the police and fire, and we have seen an explosion in the number of duty disabilities that are coming this way in the state of Minnesota. As a matter of fact, about 10% of all the dollars that are sent out every month in benefits to police and fire in the retirement and disability are disability benefits. And we've tried to amend this law and try to work on it on the fly, and it just is not the right way to do it. I encouraged a work group last year on this. I was not successful. We are having a work group this year that will address the issues that are important. We've identified the players are on the table. We feel good that the work group will yield a result that we're looking for. And this particular amendment and the provision we're talking about is also included as within the scope of the work group to talk about folks who are returning to work who might be disabled. It is not lost on the commission. It is not lost on me, and it's not lost on the other members of the Pension Commission how important this provision is, not only this provision, but within the scope of the entire work group. And we would like to be able to get that work group, have them spend summer, fall, and come back to you in January with a solution that we can take care of duty disability once and for all, instead of making this these kinds of provisions on the fly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Johnson P.
Thank you, Speaker and members. Thank you, Chair Lillie, for offering the amendment. I really do appreciate the intent of what this amendment tries to do, but there is some parts of it that are a little bit lacking. It's taken years in the first responder world to get mental health injuries or psychological injuries on parity with physical health injuries. There's a lot of stigma that goes with it. There was a lot of work that's been done on it over the years, and we were finally to the point where those two injuries were treated the same. And what this amendment would do is it would say that physical injuries we're still going to treat as these duty disability injuries, but the psychological injuries were not. And I really worry about the message that that sends to our first responders who have one of those psychological injuries, one of those injuries that's not as easy to see. It's not a broken bone, it's not a bullet wound, it is not, you know, one of those things. But those folks are still struggling, they're still fighting those injuries every day. I'm confident in the discussions that we've had so far that this work group will be able to tackle that issue without separating those two injuries, so that as we move forward, we're taking all of our first responders into account, all of the injuries that they have, whether they are psychological, whether they are physical, and making sure that we honor those injuries with the parity that they deserve, at the same time keeping that pension plan healthy and robust so that future generations of first responders will have those benefits available to them. So thank you.
I recognize a member from Scott, Representative Steer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the working group that is in this bill right now, it's going to address this issue, and it does have some merit. And I want to give a shout out to Senator Howe and Senator Hoffman for working with us on this amendment. The working group will come up with a solution. We've put Band-Aids on the duty disability for years and years and years, but we're not finding a fix for this. So this working group will address this. I will echo what Rep. Johnson said. It's just lacking. There's not enough research to say, yes, let's go with this. So the working group over the summer will address this, and it might incorporate this, but we need to do more research. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, definitely a little disappointed in the last year. I was the only no on this bill with the provisions that were in there. They took away the long-term disability or the long-term care for our disabled members of law enforcement and first responders. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get that issue fixed. I hope this working group will resolve that issue. It's something that, as a body, we should have never passed in the first place last year. As Representative Johnson said, members, our first responders not only deal with physical issues on the job, but also mental. And the PTSD side of it is real. And I just hope that this working group will be able to solve that issue and get this resolved so that our men and women in law enforcement and first responders get the care that they need. And I just hope that it works out well.
Any further discussion? I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. Thank you for having the brief discussion. It is a tough issue, and I'm glad that we have proven in this space that working groups are successful, and I'm certain that this one will be as well. I expect it to be, and that's the outcome. They have to report back to us, and so we're taking this issue very serious. And at this time, again, I want to thank you for having the discussion, and I'm going to withdraw the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Lillie withdraws the A3 amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The Chief Clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 4074, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. I recognize a member from St. Louis, Representative Johnson P.
Thank you, Speaker. This was my first session on pensions. It was a lot of fun. It's something I've had a lot of interest in for a long time. So thank you to Chair Lillie, Chair O'Driscoll for the work that they did to this. It was a unique experience working with the Senate, but really glad of the work that we were able to get done. One of the things that Chair Lillie touched on is some of the changes that we're making to the police and fire plan, buying down that 2-year wait to have it be on par with really every other retirement plan that we have in the state for our public workers, where they have to wait 1 year before they get those cost of living adjustments. For firefighters and police officers under that plan, prior to last year and this year, they had to wait 3 years for any cost of living adjustment. And when you pair that with the inflation that we saw and everything else, the buying power for those folks really dropped. And it's important to note with members of police and fire paraplan, they're generally not in Social Security. So this is the one thing that they have in retirement. And so any changes like that have a really big impact on those folks. So that is a huge improvement for the folks that are nearing and in retirement. There's obviously always going to be work to do on these things, but this session has really gone a long way of honoring those promises made to those public employees for the service that they've done. The work groups too. I think the recommendations that came out of the communications and corrections work group show that those work groups can deliver things that actually lead to good legislation to take care of these workers. So the couple of work groups that are in here, one has to do with the duty disability thing that we just talked about, and then there's another one that is going to look at rural EMS providers in these volunteer agencies that are currently not involved in some of these pension plans or things like that, and how we get them involved so that they can see those same benefits for the service that they provide, as well as looking at some of the vesting things to make sure that we're doing best by those folks. So thank you to everybody that put into work and all the conversations. I think this is a phenomenal bill for public workers, and I encourage a green vote.
I recognize a member from Washington, Representative Hill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. Hey, I rise today in support of this year's pension bill. It's a great bill, and it far exceeds what my hopes were early in the session. And it's been an honor to be serving on the commission. I want to express my gratitude and thanks to our veteran members of the commission who have pulled us aside and helped to educate us on each of the funds and some of the history. So really appreciative of Representative O'Driscoll and others who have served in that role, Representative Lillie, who have supported my growth and understanding there. I need to point out, and I'm sorry if this is a repeat for you, the commission heard it, I'm the grandson of 4 public servants, and they made it very clear to me early in life. One was a firefighter, 2 were teachers, and 1 was a civilian employee of the Department of Defense. My grandma, Jean, was in procurement. She bought tanks. How cool is that? And they were able to remain vital and vibrant members of their community, involved in service well into their 90s, staying in their homes well into their 90s. And that was only possible due to strong public pensions. And, you know, it's not lost on me that this is a critically important commission. The work we do is a long game, as I like to say. And it's been an honor to be a part of that team that recognize the importance of this stewardship for our public employees. And so again, I want to point out that we did some good work on behalf of the St. Paul Teachers Group this year, lowering their employee contribution to match that of TRAs, and also increasing their COLAs by half a point, also to match TRAs. And so very proud of that work, and we'll continue to take care of each of the 4 funds. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank the association employees for their great and diligent work as well. It's a good bill. Please vote green.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Perez Vega.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is an awesome bill. You know, being the chair of the St. Paul delegation last year, you see that our teachers were left out. I wasn't having that. I wasn't happy, and our delegation wasn't as well. But we went back to have those conversations, and I want to thank Representative Lillie and Representative O'Driscoll for making that change. We have a lot of pride in our St. Paul teachers, and they've been doing a lot of work and additional in this last school year, and to see their force and their fight come up to the plate, that this is some justice of what we went through last year. And I also want to thank Representative Meg Lugar Nicolai, who came in as a rookie and ensuring that this was going to go, not go into a reverse mode, but moving forward to make sure that our St. Paul teachers weren't left out. And I also want to give thanks for the pensions on our firefighters and our law enforcement. You know, I had a lot of conversations with our St. Paul Fire Department's Latino Outreach Society of Los Bomberos, who came to talk very strongly on saying, we need this, we want to get this across the finish line, and that's what this bill here does today. So I urge voters for a green vote, and thank you.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I am thrilled to support this bill, and I just want to say thank you to everyone on the Pensions Commission who addressed a very delicate issue in my district where we had a fire department close, and it was really challenging to close their pension plan and reconstitute it. And I especially want to thank Susan, the nonpartisan pension staff member, who went so far above and beyond the call of duty, to the point that she came to a meeting in my district late at night to meet with all of the firefighters, and she brought forward a solution that helped spark a conversation that then the firefighters came up with their own very unique solution that no one would have thought, you know, in all the different things that have been bandied about before. They came up with their own solution in a community meeting because Susan took the time to participate in my community. We are all forever grateful. Thank you very much.
I recognize a member from Washington, Representative Cha.
Thank you, Chair. I, too, rise in support of this pensions bill. But first, I want to recognize the leadership in the Pensions Commission. I want to recognize both co-chair Lillie and O'Driscoll. You know, in a tied house, we're 4-3 in the Pensions Commission. And with the leadership of O'Driscoll and Chair Lillie, we were able to put out a pension bill that I think we can all agree on. I really appreciate the professional experience of Johnson and Representative Steer for fire and police. As we understand, this duty disability is important to those officers and the state of Minnesota. The work that we did on pensions for our 911, 911 telecommunications and peace officers is important. To recognize that the work they do is important, to give them an early retirement and give them options for pensions, I think is equally important to others in this area. So I'm really proud of that work and agreement that we made. You know, to my co-chair O'Driscoll, I know that this will be the last year we will be serving on pensions. But your leadership in the Pensions Commission will be missed. Your deep knowledge and commitment to pensions and to protect pensions for the state of Minnesota is recognized, appreciated, and we on the Pension Commission will carry that on. But most of all, I'll miss your dry jokes, and we won't be hearing your bill for 17-year-olds in commerce moving forward. But thank you. So support pensions, because this is not only a bipartisan bill, it is a House pension bill for all of us. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm going to go over some of the things. For those of you that don't serve on pensions, pensions are super technical, but they're a lot of fun. And because I always forget, you know, Representative Robbins mentioned a thank you to the pension staff at LCPR. They do an incredible job, and if they're listening, thank you. Without them, it would be impossible for us to do the work that we do because of the technical nature of it. To this bill, I have some notes because I want to make sure that I don't miss some things. We've heard about some of the big components, the probation officers and 911 telecommunicators, but this bill makes a series of targeted improvements across Minnesota's public retirement pension systems. It provides meaningful security benefits for police officers, firefighters, correctional employees, probation officers, telecommunicators, teachers, volunteer firefighters, and it also makes some important administrative and technical updates that improve efficiency and accountability in our pension system. For public safety workers, this bill eliminates a one-year waiting period for cost of living adjustments for the police and fire. It also improves retirement benefits for correction employees and increases the COLA cap while reducing employee and employer contribution rates. For educators, this bill reduces employee contribution rates for members in St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund, setting us up next year to do some improvements for TRA. Volunteer firefighters also benefit through updates to statewide firefighter pension systems and their relief associations. The legislation also includes fairness and modernization provisions across all of our pension systems. Employers of reemployed retirees will now continue paying employer contributions. This is an important component that's going to help build fund stability. It updates definitions to reflect the Minnesota paid leave policies. It allows elected officials to participate in healthcare savings plans, and investment and administrative procedures are streamlined to reduce unnecessary burdens. The bill also, as we've heard, establishes important work groups to study future improvements, improving firefighter vesting, emergency medical personnel, and disability benefits for public safety officers. Overall, this legislation reflects what I love is this balanced approach that honors our commitments to public employees, recognizes the evolving nature of public service work, and responsibly invest in long-term sustainability for Minnesota's retirement systems. One of the things that, you know, we talked a little bit about the leadership, and I want to thank Representative Lillie for stepping up and all of my commission members, and I think I've said this before, but this is a group of senators and House members, Republicans, Democrats, that come together, argue, work behind the scenes, try to make improvements. But without Representative O'Driscoll, we oftentimes don't find the money to do it. And so I want to thank Representative O'Driscoll for the years of commitment that he's made to pensions. We will miss him terribly. Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this. The main thing I want to say here is I want all the paid on-call volunteers, the EMT folks, the 911 operators, all to know that we heard you. We're going to help. There's going to be something happening. It may not be as fast as you want or what you want, but the discussions that are going to go from now on are going to be transparent. It's not going to be this, what are you doing? What's happening? There's going to be a lot of good discussions. A lot of things that I heard, like 911 operators, how come they can't retire at 55, like a police officer? You know, that argument has been going on forever. Let's have those discussions. Let's find out. Are they under the same amount of stress and duress as an officer? Let's have those discussions. The paid on-call volunteers, Fire Relief Association people, having new people come in and leave different organizations. Now we're going to have those discussions. Instead of coming down to our offices and telling us, it's wrong, it's all that. Yeah, we know, we heard you, you know. Let's, and I applaud the group for doing this pensions group. I'm glad because now our people that do these sort of things know that we're listening and we can hopefully help them. With that, I want to thank all the chairs and all you, not volunteers, we all get paid here, but all the people that that are on pensions. Thank you for what you do. Like Danny, Representative Nadeau said, it's complicated, but it's really not complicated once you start digging in. But for all of us on the outside, it is complicated. I want to thank you all for your hard work, and I hope to see passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It is with great honor that I put the final pension bill on the desk for you to vote on in my legislative career of 16 years. I have worked tirelessly to get this done for people. This is not an issue of Republicans and Democrats. This is an issue of hardworking Minnesotans taking care of other Minnesotans. There's an adage in the fire service that firefighters run to the fire when others are running from it. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out a former House member, Jeff Howe, who's now a senator, and the work that he has done on duty disability and has been a fabulous partner in moving these issues forward. And I want to thank Representatives Johnson, Hill, Cha, Lillie, Steer, Nadeau. Thank you for letting me be your leader. You know, people have titles in name, but you've not only said you have the title, you let me help you to get to an end game that I think is good for all of Minnesota. And so again, it's with great privilege and great honor that I ask for your vote on the final pension bill that I will be involved with in the Minnesota State Legislature. Members, please vote green.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for the discussion. It's really quite a historic bill. I know I've said that, and I'm saying it again. You know, when we had the trifecta, they may have had more money, but what we were able to do last year and this year in this bill with divided government, we all should be really proud. And the work with the Senate was really, it worked out in the end good. I'm glad that you mentioned some members that are retiring, and Representative Howe is retiring, been on the pensions for a long time, or Senator rather, I served with him, he was a rep, so sorry. And Senator Pappas, great members of the legislature, and obviously Chair O'Driscoll. You know, early in session, you probably don't know or pay attention to the space, but we had divided government, and they decided. So this committee was in trouble for a second because we were tied. We were going to go into the into pensions with a 3-3 thing, and Senator Friends said no, probably not. So we with Chair O'Driscoll, he let me kind of be the lead on pensions. But it really has not been the case. Since day one, we've been a team. But it's more than that. He is just, he's a purist on this, on the pension space. He's an amazing member across the board, I would argue, and been in all areas, has been great. But this pension, it's going to be a big loss. You know, a lot of new people come in the legislature and think, oh yeah, you're going to, and there's amazing members on, in this body, and they show up every year, and it's incredible. But there is something to say about the knowledge of through the years. And quite honestly, in this space, Representative Driscoll, they had hard years. They had, and he didn't speak about it today, but they had to do some tough stuff. So things are a little better, and our leaders had the wisdom to invest in this the last couple of years, and this year's it's great. But really, thank you, Representative Driscoll. You're an amazing member just overall. Our commission, it was fun. It was actually, you know, it's silly at night where, you know, everybody else was walking away from the Capitol, and we're, you know, we're walking towards it for this meeting. And, you know, from our side, we had amazing members. Representative Chaw just did a great job, and Representative Hill and Representative Johnson, as you can see, is just, you know, all three of them were just really solid. And I've really enjoyed working with Representative Nadeau. He is really thoughtful and comes up with a variety of ideas. And probably my favorite is Representative Steer, to be honest. He's an incredible member. And I always say, if anything goes down here, we're all going to stand behind him too. So that comes from an old karate guy, but I'm going to hide behind you. So anyways. No, the pension bills, it's good, and it really values the workers of the state of Minnesota. And I don't usually talk this long, obviously, ever, but I really want to thank O'Driscoll and the bill that we were able to put together with the Senate. It's really a solid bill, and I hope the board lights up green. And I'm excited that we're able to do this in this time. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Engen.
Yes.
Say that again.
Engen votes yes.
Engen votes aye. Hudson.
Hudson votes aye.
Hudson votes aye. Momani Hiltsley.
Momani Hiltsley, aye.
Momani Hiltsley votes aye. Rarick.
Go. Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 129 yeas and 5 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 5074. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File number 5074, an act relating to claims against the state, the first engrossment.
I recognize a member from Blue Earth, Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. About every year or so, we pass the claims bill. The claims deals kind of with 3 different categories. One are exoneration claims, second is personal injury claims, third is property claims. In the history of the claims bill prior to this, the largest exoneration claim was for an individual that had been locked up for 8 years and then exonerated from his crimes. Unfortunately, recently we had Mr. Marvin Haynes, who was incarcerated when he was 16, and 20 years later, it came out that he was innocent and he was subsequently released. We cannot give him those years back, but we are able to put a financial recompense for that time that was taken away, which is why this year, this is the largest claims bill that we've had. $4.5 million will be going to him for the years that were unjustly taken. There are 2 other exoneration claims this year and 1 personal injury claim, and I would appreciate the body's support.
There are no amendments at the desk. The Chief Clerk will give the bill its 3rd reading.
Third reading, House File number 5074.
3rd reading. Discussion. I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Blue Earth, Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to give a shout out to my colleague on the Claims Committee, Representative Quam. Whenever I forget something, I lean over to him. He's like a lockbox. He always remembers it. I appreciate that. But then there's also the nonpartisan staff who puts together these really big binders, and they do a lot of the work ahead of time for us and flag the issues that we really need to make sure we pay attention to. So I appreciate the nonpartisan staff as well. It's a good bill. Vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Engen. Engen. Hudson.
Hudson votes aye.
Hudson votes aye. Omani Hiltsley.
Wamanya Hiltsley, aye.
Omani Hiltsley votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye. Engen.
Engen votes aye.
Engen votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 134 yeas and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, the next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3067. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 3067, an act relating to education, clarifying paraprofessional qualifications.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you notice, there is a DE amendment to this bill, which is technical in nature, but I can go over that more when we get to that. This is an amendment to a bill passed last year. So under No Child Left Behind and Every Student Succeeds Act, as well as IDEA, Title I and special education paras must be highly qualified to serve students. We do not have a licensing board that licenses paraprofessionals in Minnesota. And as I said, last year's education omnibus bill included language allowing paraprofessionals in special education programs to use a competency-based program to meet those federal personnel requirements. This bill extends those same innovations to paraprofessionals in Title I programs. Under this bill, there will be 2 pathways for all paraprofessionals to demonstrate how they meet our students' needs, either through a test or on-the-job training validated by their school administration. Our paraprofessionals are the first face our students see in the morning and the last face they see at night. They feed our students, they drive them to school, they help kids with special needs learn and move around our schools. Title I paras are working in the lowest income schools in our state, and I believe we need those to keep those valuable educators working with their students. As someone who attended Title I schools my entire career as a student and who represents several Title I schools, this is very necessary to make sure that our students have the support they need to succeed. Please support this bill and your educators. Thank you.
There's an amendment at the desk. The Chief Clerk will report the amendment.
Jordan moves to amend House File Number 3067, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A1.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as I said, this language is really technical in nature. The lawyers from school administrators, school employee unions, and Minnesota Department of Education got together to lawyer and come up with the best language that will allow those Title I paraprofessionals to meet federal personnel requirements by demonstrating competencies in writing and math. MDE will provide guidance to schools by August 1st of this year on how to validate those competencies. And currently the only option approved by MDE is by passing a test, the ETS Parapro assessment, which is a 2.5-hour test that is being phased out. So I ask for member support to get the bill in the shape it needs to be for our state and federal requirements for paraprofessionals.
I recognize a member from Preborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I rise in support of this bill. This is something we did here in our Education Policy Committee, and we passed it on to General Register with one caveat, saying that we wanted to make sure that the changes that we make do not interfere with federal funding, because we do have Title I funding that comes from the federal government. And Chair Jordan graciously agreed to that. And by the time just a few days before, we have gotten assurance, and I'd like to actually share this from the Minnesota Department of Education. And they've said, after consultation with expert teams at the Minnesota Department of Education, We believe, based on other states' experiences, that the federal government would find this proposal to be in compliance with federal regulations and as it pertains to federal funding requirements. And it's signed by Angela Mansfield, Assistant Commissioner. You should have a copy of this on your desk, either that or it's coming. But we do have that assurance that the federal funding should be okay. And I feel good about the bill. I think it's important that we do have fairness in our licensing with the paras here. I would like to say that if for some reason it does come back, and this could happen, that we have issues with federal funding, I would expect MDE to absorb those costs instead of putting them on our schools, because it would be to no fault of our schools if that happens. So with that, I urge support for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any further discussion on the adoption of the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The Chief Clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House Law Number 3067, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. As a teacher in the classroom, I just want to take every opportunity I have to let people know that we can't do the work that we do with students without our paraprofessional colleagues, without our ESPs. And, you know, without them, some of our students with the greatest needs may have those needs go unmet. And these are the students that need us the most in our school settings. And so recently, I want to share a quick story with you. Recently, I stopped back at the school where I work at Stillwater Area High School. And I went down while I was there checking in with my boss and some of my colleagues. I went to get my mail in the mailroom. And as soon as I entered that space, it's kind of a busy location in the building, kind of a beehive. Suddenly, I was surrounded by 4 of my paraprofessional colleagues. And they were under a great deal of stress. And I said, what's happening? And, you know, there was a determination made that they were no longer, after decades of service to some of our most vulnerable student groups, serving them to help them with their meals, to help them to use the restroom, to help support them throughout their day, every single minute of the school day. They were suddenly told, you are no longer qualified to do this work. Each of the 4 that I had the pleasure and the opportunity to visit with that morning told me that if they had to go back to school, if they were subjected to an hours-long standardized exam, that they would move along, that they would find other work to engage in. Our workforce is in peril. Should we not pass this bill and allow for them to be credentialed using that rubric in district? And we can't allow that to happen for our students, for our families, and for our school communities. And certainly 2 of these colleagues who provide such a valuable service to our kids every single day. Thank you, members.
Any further discussion on the bill? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, thanks for your support on this bill. Thank you, Chair Bennett, for your collaboration on this bill. That work really made a difference for our ESPs and paraprofessionals who, I just want us to really think about our paraprofessionals and what they do in our schools and who they are in our communities. ESPs and paras are much more likely to work and live and look like the students that they serve. They are also the lowest paid educators in our schools. They are the ones who are doing some of the most difficult job in our schools, where they're responsible for safety on buses. They're responsible for helping kids live their lives and go to school and be in an integrated school and live with dignity and respect and concentrate on learning. And they're also really critical for school safety. 75% of ESPs and paras play some sort of role in facilitating safety in our schools. And also, they really make sure that our students with special needs have the ability to have their IEPs met and be in our classrooms. More than 50% of all paraprofessionals are assigned to programs serving ES students on IEPs, and this bill impacts paraprofessionals working in our schools that experience the most poverty. Again, I want to say that I'm extremely proud to have gone to Title I schools my whole career, and paraprofessionals were a big part of my educational experience, and one of the reasons why I'm standing here giving this speech about paraprofessionals. So thank you to every single paraprofessional in Minnesota and across our country. This is a really small thing, but I'm glad we could get this done for you. So members, please vote green for those people working so hard in your schools.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Engen.
Engen votes aye.
Engen votes aye. Hudson.
Hudson votes aye.
Say it again. Say it again.
Hudson votes aye.
Hudson votes aye. Momani Hiltsley.
Momani Hiltsley, aye.
Momani Hiltsley votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 134 yeas and 0 nays, the bill is passed and as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 4282. The chief clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 4282, an act relating to forecast adjustments, making forecast adjustments to pre-K through 12 education programs, human services, Department of Children, Families, Youth, and Metro Mobility.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Youakim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, before you is Senate File 4282 and Ways and Means. The language from House File 4213 was amended onto that. That's the forecast adjustments for the K through 12 bill, so they align with the February 26 forecast data. Members, this funds each and every one of your schools in their K through 12 programs with appropriations according to the underlying statutory formula. These changes in appropriations both up and down are real, and the changes must be enacted to law so that your schools can get their money. So members, I ask for a yes vote.
There are no amendments at the desk. The chief clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 4282.
Third reading. I recognize the member from Scott, Representative Bakeberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chair Youakim, Chair Krisha, for bringing this clean forecast bill. There's been a lot of conversation about about non-public pupil aid and MDE's role in the distribution of non-public pupil aid. And I just want to make it clear that in this bill, there are multiple areas where we are funding non-public schools. So if you are of the belief, or you are believing the narrative that we cannot fund non-public schools through MDE, then I would anticipate that you vote no. Now, I'm sure there will be some members that vote no for other reasons, but I just want to highlight a few things from this forecast bill that shows that we do fund non-public schools through MDE. So the universal meals, reimbursement for universal meals are paid directly to our non-public schools. This bill includes funding for non-public pupil aid. So those are counselors, social workers, nursing, textbooks. That non-public pupil aid is paid to our non-public schools. The bill also includes funding for non-public pupil transportation that gets our non-public kids to and from schools. That is paid through this bill. The bill also includes direct payments to tribal schools, which under state law are recognized as non-public schools. So when we talk about all kids means all kids. That is important, and that's what this forecast bill does, is it provides funding for all kids. And I want to just say thank you to every member in the chamber who was here last year, that we stood together and defended non-public pupil aid. If you can remember, going back to when Wendell Anderson was governor of Minnesota, this was established, because even then, it didn't matter where a kid went to school. There were just some fundamental pieces that were important, like counseling, mental health support, being able to be healthy at school from a school nurse. But if you believe that we can't, or frankly shouldn't, be funding non-public schools through MDE, then I would anticipate that you vote no on this bill. With this bill, we are aligning state funding to our current funding formulas, and those funding formulas include funding for non-public schools. For those reasons, and because this bill helps fund all of our schools, all of our kids, public, non-public, tribal schools, it funds all of them, and most importantly, it doesn't include the cuts that, frankly, we as a House stood in unison against again this year that were demanded from the governor. I would strongly encourage a green vote so that we can fund our schools, because if we don't pass this, there will be additional burdens and cuts forced upon our schools. Members, vote green.
Further discussion on the bill. I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I, too, recognize this bill as the forecast bill that cleans up the session law requirements that we have, and I would urge a green vote. This bill just simply aligns us to the 2026 February forecast, to the appropriations needed based on the enrollment of the students. So this sets everything into motion to make sure that that's done correctly for schools. However, it does not fix the pending cuts that we're seeing that have come from the earlier budgets passed by the trifecta and the DFL. We still have compensatory issues that the schools are dealing with. And with that, we have underlining reimbursements for mandated summer unemployment benefits that we know are running out. We have cuts that will be pushed to the schools through other mandates that they're facing. These are all the things that we are hearing from our schools today. This does not address the $250 million cut that Governor Walz pushed down upon this legislature and into the budget bill last year that are looming. Those are hard budget cuts at our schools, and in fact, this year he proposed another 50 on top of that. Members, without this session law adjustment, the schools will be short of the dollars. However, we still have a large building, a state office building, that is guaranteed the payments will happen. So we have to pass this to keep our schools in alignment, yet those payments are happening on a guaranteed basis. Despite everything that we're doing, we need to pass this bill so that burden is not passed on to the schools. And members, if we do not do this, as I said, our schools will be facing that burden, but we do need to send this off as clean. We need to send this forward to the Senate with a clean forecast. Let's get that done, and let's come out of that conference committee with a clean bill. They can simply concur, and we can move on, and we're still having discussions about other possibilities, and hopefully we can get to those. So, members, I urge a green vote, but recognize the schools are still facing some very difficult times ahead.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Youakim.
Thank you, Representative Kresha, for those comments. And you're right, these schools won't get these adjustments without this money. And in particular, special education has a $70 million increase for next year that districts would not get without this funding. Just a few quick corrections, though. Non-public schools can get the universal meals. We don't mandate those, though. They have to actually apply through SEEP to get them. Tribal schools are sovereign schools. They're sovereign nations. Any student can go to them, and they don't charge tuition, so they are not private schools. And I have good news for everybody, too, is that the UI money, we still have enough to get it through this summer for the payments. This is a retroactive payment, so this summer they'll be fine, but we have plenty of time next year to look at that. So, members, please vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Ready?
Engen.
Engen votes no.
Engen votes no. Hudson.
Hudson votes aye.
Hudson votes aye. Momani Hiltsley.
Momani Hiltsley, aye.
Momani Hiltsley votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 122 yeas and 12 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. Members, there are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. Motions and resolutions.
Long moves that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File Number 5084 be recalled from the Committee on State Government, Finance, and Policy, be given its second, third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion. We heard last night on the floor that the bills that you introduce matter and that signing on to bills matters as well. We have 14 members of this body who have signed on to a bill that would make abortion illegal in the state of Minnesota. And we have heard many times from Republican leaders, including those running for statewide office, that this is a settled issue in our state, that we have a state Supreme Court decision that protects reproductive rights for Minnesotans. But we see very clearly with this bill, House File 5084, that this is still a very live issue in this body and that elections still very much have consequences that could determine the reproductive rights of Minnesotans. 2/3 of Minnesotans believe that abortion should be illegal, and yet House File 5084 would create a, quote, right to life, quote, from the moment of fertilization. This is as extreme an anti-abortion measure as we have seen proposed nearly anywhere in the country. It would criminalize decisions to terminate pregnancies except in narrow circumstances. It would potentially criminalize widely popular procedures that help many people get pregnant, including IVF. It would criminalize medical examiners as well for providing medical care, including potentially for miscarriages. And it could result in criminalization of adverse pregnancy outcomes, often before an individual even knows that they are pregnant, because this is, again, from the moment of fertilization. Minnesotans deserve access to health care. They overwhelmingly support reproductive rights. So, members, I'd urge that we take a strong stand as a body and vote no on House File 5084. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Finke.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Long, for your motion. I want to just, first of all, I just want to say, and as Leader Long said, that this is a settled issue in Minnesota, even if it's not settled everywhere. We know what the data says about support for reproductive freedom, bodily autonomy, and the right to an abortion. We would, like many other states, defeat this amendment soundly at the polls. Just as since the Dobbs decision came down, we saw states like, liberal bastions like Michigan and Ohio and Kansas and Montana all vote to protect abortion at the ballot, because this is a settled matter in the state of Minnesota. But I also just want to make sure we understand what it means to the people who live under states that have laws like this in place. There's many stories now that have come out since we have seen full unmitigated abortion bans across the country. In Georgia last year, you might have heard the story of a 24-year-old woman who was arrested actually out of the hospital where she was recovering after she suffered a miscarriage. She passed out, she had a miscarriage, she was transferred to the hospital by loved ones, and while she was at the hospital, she was arrested for concealing the death of another person and for the abandonment of a human body. After the miscarriage, she had thrown the remains of her miscarriage into the garbage. So that was abandoning the human body, and then she was arrested. Eventually, those charges were dropped after much outcry, including from the coroner, who said this was a natural miscarriage. But that's a terrifying thing for a 24-year-old woman to go through, for any person to have to face. And then earlier this year, just in 2026 in Kentucky, a 35-year-old woman was arrested. She was charged with homicide and abuse of a corpse, as well as tampering with evidence after she had a self-administered abortion using mifepristone, and she ended up in jail. Those charges were also dropped. They were dropped because of the outcry of having individuals lose the right to their own body and having often men criminalize the ability to simply control your own life. These kinds of stories, these are just two. There are more, but there are more coming. There are more coming if we pass legislation like this, if we go into a world where suddenly people are not in control of their own life. What does it mean to be in control of your own life? It means being able to choose a family. If you want to choose a family through IVF, this amendment would probably stop your ability to do that. That's what we have seen in other similar amendments, that if you are, for example, gay, and you want to have a child through IVF, you would take that right away. That's choosing family, and that's choosing, we would be choosing to take that right away. And if you are so inclined as to choose not to start a family, as we protect here in Minnesota, and as overwhelmingly the people of Minnesota want to see protected, we have to have that right too. So this is extremism, radical extremism. Sometimes people say that about me, and I'm saying it this time about the other side. The idea that we would take full autonomy away from individuals, regardless of whether they're choosing to have a family or choosing to wait, it's extremism, and it's disgusting, and it's wrong, and the people of Minnesota reject it. They reject it outright, as this bill will be and forever will be in Minnesota. So thank you for your attention to this matter.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and thank you, Representative Long, for this opportunity to stand up both against violence against the most vulnerable individuals and for democracy, for the people of Minnesota to decide this important issue. This is an extraordinary issue of conscience, and it certainly is a settled issue in Minnesota law currently, and perhaps it is a settled issue in Minnesota public opinion. But members, every abortion is an act of violence. It's an act of violence against a distinct human being. That is what my conscience tells me, and I know this is a very important issue of conscience to many Minnesotans. And so certainly to stand against violence, to stand for conscience, and to stand for democracy, I certainly think we should go ahead and offer Minnesotans the ability to make their voice heard. Representative Finke, you may be correct in your assessment of the public opinion on this issue, but why should we be afraid of that? Why should we be afraid of allowing the people of Minnesota to make a decision about that issue? So I encourage members to vote their conscience on this very important issue of conscience.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. First of all, has there been a roll call requested?
There has not. Roll call will be had, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. So, members, this bill that the motion is concerning is a very extreme bill. I'm urging a no vote on the motion, just to be very clear. And we are bringing this up today to emphasize how very extreme members of the Republican Party are on this issue. Because if you look at the language of the bill is saying that unborn children have a right to life. And then there are some exceptions in the bill. So what the bill is really doing is it's presuming that anyone who has an abortion has committed murder unless they can show otherwise. So it is saying, it is making murderers out of many, many people in Minnesota who are choosing to control their own reproductive rights, and making them come forward and prove that the abortion that they had, or the miscarriage for that matter, that it meets the requirements of this amendment. So think about this, the ramifications of this are tremendous. There's been a lot of discussion in this body about IVF, about families that are unable to conceive and are using reproductive technologies to conceive, and they are creating embryos. And under this amendment, an embryo would have a right to life. Just think about that. A couple creates embryos, decides to dispose of those embryos for whatever reason, and now they've committed murder under this amendment. So I heard Representative Niska say, well, we want to give people the right to vote on this and decide. Well, I would argue that Minnesotans have decided. They've decided very strongly. They've voiced their opinions on this, and I would. It seems to me that many of the people, probably most people in Minnesota, are kind of glad not to have to be dealing with this issue again and continuously. But think about it. What a big government thing this is to do to people. Those of you who like small government, who want government to get out of people's business, boy, this bill puts government right in people's business in one of the biggest ways you can imagine, by making them murderers unless they prove otherwise. And another issue that, think about this, under the language of the amendment that would be proposed in this bill, there are some exceptions, but one of the exceptions that isn't there, think about this. A 10-year-old child can get pregnant. This has happened. Think about who this might impact. You could have a 10-year-old child who was raped. By definition, they don't get pregnant unless they're raped. Or a 12-year-old child, or, this happens. This happens actually with disturbing frequency. And under this amendment, that child would not be able to have an abortion without it being a murder. So you would be making, if a 10-year-old child can be charged with murder, maybe not, right, under current law, but, slightly older than that, and they're a murderer for having an abortion after being raped. Or maybe it isn't even a child. Maybe it's an older person, somebody who was raped and gets pregnant. Maybe they were raped by someone they're related to, and they become pregnant. And then what this amendment is saying is that person cannot have an abortion because it would be murder, because you are giving that fetus, even if it was fertilized one day ago, it now has a right to life. So this is a very troubling, very extreme bill, and I would think that even if you don't like abortion, even if you yourself would never have an abortion, the idea that you would take that decision away from the person who is experiencing the pregnancy and say, oh no, it should be murder unless that person proves otherwise under the narrow terms of this amendment, that's a very extreme position. People who are deciding how to control their own fertility, whether to use IVF to create a family, or deciding that they don't want to carry a pregnancy right now, those people are not murderers. And this is a very extreme bill, and I urge a no vote on the motion to suspend the rules.
I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about protecting life. Last week, members, my wife and I received the difficult news that we have lost a baby. We love that baby. We love the life that is created every single time that a baby is conceived. Every single time that a baby is conceived in Minnesota, that baby has life. That baby matters. That baby deserves protection under law. I am proud to be a co-author of this bill. I am proud to stand for life. I am grateful to be able to tell the story that every single human life matters. And that no matter the changes to law that happen across this land, that this caucus right here is going to stand for life. We're going to live a culture of life. We're going to walk it every single day. We're going to stand for life, for the value of every single life. And members, as we approach this discussion, it's sensitive. This conversation is meaningful. The life of the baby, the life of the mother, the life of the father, the life of the siblings of that conceived baby matter. And what this bill gives us an opportunity to do is to have the conversation with Minnesotans, to give them the choice. For them to have the decision at the ballot box to protect human life. That's what this bill does. It's so easy to support. It is so easy to support when you are saying that Minnesotans get to have their voice heard in the laws in this state. That's easy. This might be the easiest vote that I take this session. The simple, most easy, and yet most impactful and important vote to protect human life. So many of you have shared your story with me over the last week about how your family has faced the loss of a miscarriage. And this bill that we debate today, This bill that would give Minnesotans the choice as to whether or not we, together as a state, will protect life. This bill has the protection for my family, for my wife, and for every family that has experienced a miscarriage. That's what this bill does. And when we consider the important debates that we have as we seek to live our faith, to live our values, and to set an example for future generations of Minnesotans, we have an opportunity to invite Minnesotans to be a part of that conversation, to defend every single human life. And I'm honored and blessed to be able to stand here today, grateful for the opportunity to vote yes and support every human life.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a difficult topic. I think the last time we talked about it was when it was a debate on a bill about late-term abortions. Our first child died in a miscarriage. But I remember when my youngest son started school, he had two friends. They were twins. They were great friends. And we got to know them in the family. If they had been born 4 years before, they would never have survived. They were very premature. When my grandson was born 6 weeks premature, we didn't get to see him for weeks because it was there were concerns about exposing him to others. But his finger, the first picture we saw of him, he was sitting there, and my son's, the tip of his little finger, the baby had all 4 fingers wrapped on that. So tiny. I don't know if we didn't have the Mayo Clinic, if he would have survived. Life experiences are important in this debate. Understanding that people come from the experiences they have in life, and you can have different opinions on a topic, but don't throw away and not consider the life experiences that had defined how we feel and have developed on a topic. And those 2 boys that were very premature, I've seen pictures of their children now. And that's why I understand from my life experiences that that human being is a human being before the 9 months are up. And it's a difficult topic, but what's required when you have a topic like this is to listen and try and understand where the people come from and where they've gone through things. This is not a topic for, pomposity and bloviating one's opinion and another theirs. It's a topic where the first step is listening and understanding. Then as a body, we can make better choices considering that there are different experiences and outcomes and situations, and that a all or nothing doesn't take that into consideration. So I and many others are frustrated by the fact that a few years ago it was basically up to the time of birth, and how that was upsetting to me and others. So we need to give seriousness to the serious topic because it impacts a lot of hearts, and I feel for you. It's a difficult situation. And that's how we need to approach these topics. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Katiza Wattoon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How does that Whitesnake song go? Here we are again, members and Minnesotans. We were called alarmist. We were called crazy. We were told that the overturning of Roe would never happen, but it did. And in response, Minnesotans elected the first DFL pro-choice majority legislature, and we moved under the leadership of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman with urgency to pass, and Governor Walz signed into law the Protect Reproductive Options Act in January of 2023, just before what would have been the 50th anniversary of the decision of Roe v. Wade. We live in a representative democracy, members. Minnesotans delivered a pro-choice trifecta because they don't want what happened to Roe to happen here. And now, after a very long campaign season in 2022 in which Republicans tried to tell Minnesotans that, oh, this is settled law, Doe v. Gomez is settled law, it's just the Supreme Court would, it's not an issue. That, of course, was a lie. And had Minnesotans delivered a GOP trifecta in 2022, I can only imagine where we would be right now. Republicans are now showing us that they won't stop in trying to take away our reproductive freedom and our bodily autonomy. There's been discussions, members, about how somehow God gave us the right to own guns. I don't think Adam and Eve had guns, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. I was born with a uterus, though. Sometimes it didn't work the way that it was supposed to when my husband and I were trying to conceive and grow our family. So I stand here before you as a mother of 4 who became a parent via foster and adoption and, by miracle, a biological pregnancy. But not all pregnancies are celebrations, members, and not all pregnancies end in a happy baby. And I am so grateful, Representative Schultz, that you shared the heartbreak that you and your wife have experienced so recently. Representative Reimer did the same in committee a couple weeks ago. I only was able to be pregnant once, and I never had to deal with that. And my heart goes out to everyone who has had to deal with that. And we have heard so many stories over the years from members here who have shared their own stories, who have shared stories of their constituents. The point is that this is not how we should do this. And it's really upsetting that we have to continue having this conversation, because there are those of us who have been warning and sounding the alarm for years and years and years. And now on Mother's Day, the Trump-Vance administration releases some crazy website called moms.gov, which is a glorified data collection website. And the first thing it does is send women to a crisis pregnancy center. They're not required to have medical practitioners at crisis pregnancy centers. This world, this dystopian society that we are living in and walking into is a nightmare. And it sounds like some of our Republican colleagues are going to make it very clear today that they don't care about settled court precedent, that they don't care that Minnesotans sent a DFL pro-choice trifecta to pass a law so that we couldn't overturn that Supreme Court precedent. And now they want to send a constitutional amendment back to Minnesotans to try to take away our bodily autonomy. We're not going to let that happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Preborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to probably say something right now that's going to be offensive to both sides of this body, because we do this all the time. We have these bills and these amendments that I call the gotcha bills and the gotcha amendments. And I don't blame you, because we did this to you yesterday, to my Democratic friends over there. And so we're going to go back and forth and lob these political bombs instead of getting the things done we can actually get done in this body that we agree upon. But I'm going to say a few things about life right now, because I believe in the inherent right to life of every human being, in the womb, out of the womb, to the point of natural death. And I will gladly stand on that. I also understand the incredible decisions that have to be made and the very sad things that happen during pregnancies. I get that. We have to recognize that too. But we always recognize that that life inside a womb is precious. And I will never say that it's not, and it's a life. And I will just mention, and I'm not going to say the bill number, because I know we're not supposed to talk about other bills at this point, but this does relate because it talks about life. Some of my friends on the other side of the aisle have a bill, and there's 10 of them, that would basically give wild rice the inherent right to life in Minnesota. The wild rice plant. Recognize the inherent right of uncultivated wild rice to exist and thrive in Minnesota. So that evidently is going to be recognized, but not the child in the womb. And by the way, it is not extremism to promote democracy. And this particular amendment just brings the question to the voters. Democracy is not extremism. Voters should be able to choose that if we would choose to bring this up. But we know this is going nowhere. Because, I'll go back to the first statement I made, it's political game playing. It's political lobbying of bombs back and forth to try to get you, let's get some lit pieces. I say enough of that. I'm sick of it. I've been here 12 years. And we've almost gotten nothing done, and we need to get things done. So let's get to work for voters. Instead of lobbying these political bombs, we both do it. I acknowledge that. We did it yesterday to you. I'm sorry. And now you're doing it back to us. But who's just going to say stop it? So I'd like to say it. Please, stop it.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Speaker. This is a hard conversation because, of course, we all have a lot of personal interaction with this. I have also had the pain of miscarriage and been on that side of it at least 2 times. There were a couple times we couldn't confirm it, but we believe we did. One of those moments, we went to the doctor with a positive pregnancy test, excited about this, and we got the horrible news that the pregnancy wasn't visible, but even worse, the levels were still such that it showed potential pregnancy, which for those in here who had bad health education, as I did at that time, means that it is most likely an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the embryo implants not in the main cavity where it can grow in the uterus, but usually in the fallopian tube. In that case, that child is not going to survive. That most likely will continue to grow, cause the fallopian tube to burst. That will not only endanger the life of, in this case, my wife, the woman who is carrying, but will also make it more difficult in the future to conceive again. Under this bill, as it is currently written, ectopic pregnancies would not be able to be given treatment. We have seen that in other states. Even when you insert things like for the life of a mother, you have to wait until that life is actually in danger, so that embryo would continue to grow until you get to a dangerous point. Incredibly dangerous, members. And I do want to speak to this from a place of someone who once would have argued on that side of the aisle on this issue and is now on this side of the aisle. Obviously, we can't see it, but on the stream, there's going to be a chyron, and it's going to say I have my BA from Moody Bible Institute. You will not be shocked to learn that when I attended there, I was what you would call pro-life. I would have told everyone that I believed life began at conception. And this moment where we had a potential ectopic pregnancy and had to make very hard decisions was the start of my long journey to getting to this side of the aisle on this particular issue. Part of it was our infertility journey. Side note, there's a great bill that Carly Katiza-Wattoon has about IVF being affordable for Minnesota families that we should absolutely include in our Commerce Omnibus Bill that hopefully will come up soon after committee. But you learn about reproduction very quickly and in ways you didn't expect when you are dealing with infertility. This bill says that humans, defines a human life as any time after conception. Do you all in this room who have signed your name to this or who believe in this, do you know how many embryos after conception survive in the womb? It's 30%. So according to the language of this bill, 70% of humanity never even implants in the womb and is naturally discarded by the body. And I'm a Christian. I really struggled with this idea. I couldn't conceive of a God who my foundational belief that life began at conception, 70% of humanity would just not be even given a chance. Struggled with this, I struggled with this. Do you know, by the way, after implementation, how many embryos survive in the womb? It's much higher, but it's still only 70%. So that's 70% of the already low 30% from the moment of conception. Slowly, you realize that that slogan that is thrown around, life begins at conception, is not something that we can just take at face value. It's not something that we can just throw around to win an argument. It is complicated. And I learned, and I truly believe this, we're not arguing about if an individual person should or should not have an abortion. That's not what our difference in belief is. Our difference in belief is who decides in that moment what medical care is received. The doctors and the people involved, or us in this room, or even the voters of Minnesota. It's a complicated issue, members. And it is incumbent upon us in complicated issues to have the hard discussions, not to throw around small phrases, not to talk about billboards, but to really dig in. And when we dig in, reproductive health care, reproductive freedom is important, it is complex, and it is not something that we should legislate, certainly not at the level of this extreme bill. We already know Minnesotans don't want this. But I'm talking to you as someone who used to believe as you did and is now here. We value life, the life of the mother, the life of the child. I mourn those miscarriages, the pain that others in this room know very, very well. We're not minimizing that. We are actually elevating that and giving the power to those who are in those incredibly difficult scenarios. They make the choices about their bodies, about their families, not us.
I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're quickly reminded once again Minnesota delivered a trifecta, and I assume in this case to support unrestricted abortion through birth. Talk about extremism, that's what's been brought up here, that our position to protect an unborn child is extremism. To me, extremism is a third trimester child being destroyed and protecting that. So what might be a priority for the metro districts, that's not the district that I represent. And I would be doing my district a disservice if I didn't stand up and let them know that, yes, I was an author to co-author to 5084, and anything I can do to stop a third trimester child all the way through birth from being destroyed. That's just, I'm sorry, that's unbelievable. A eagle's egg has more protection in the state of Minnesota than a third trimester child. It's just unbelievable. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm hearing a lot of discussion today about choices that Minnesotans have to make, about decisions that we make as Minnesotans. And I'm curious, I'm not going to ask anyone to yield to this, but I would encourage everyone who's listening to envision that neighbor you've never met and now realize that they're the one you're going to call whenever you need a doctor appointment because it's their opinion and their decision matters and their choice matters in how you and your family are going to approach healthcare. So I would agree, though, that choices do matter, and those choices belong to each one of us, to each one of our constituents, to each of their families. When we want to talk about control and who has control in this situation, there is no control that is any more local than each individual person deciding for themselves what happens to their body. And there were some remarks about democracy. I'm not aware of where the polling stations are for folks to decide how they might want to regulate my body, your body. My health is not up for election, neither is yours. Maybe if this bill was on the ballot, it would be, though. Our bodies are not open to democracy. The government and how we operate is open for democracy. But nobody outside of you gets to decide what happens to you. That's what apparently we should ask all Minnesotans is, do you believe that you have the right to tell your neighbor whatever they should do with their body? If we're not confident that we have choices in Minnesota, I have some good news. The good news is that right now in the state of Minnesota, every single person has the right to choose what's right for them. They have the right to reproductive health care, thanks to the good work of the Minnesota legislature in 2023. There is no better local control than you can get than what we have provided for Minnesotans through the PRO Act. If we are looking at this constitutional amendment that is proposed, I'm reading that, this wouldn't prohibit medical treatment necessary to preserve the health of a pregnant individual. And I'm just thinking about that pregnant individual, and at which point their story matters, and at which point their health care matters. It might not matter today. It might not matter because they're undocumented. and we're just going to dehumanize that person. They don't have personhood on their own right now. But tomorrow, there's a conception that occurs in their body. Now, all of a sudden, we've decided that we care about undocumented people. And then the baby is born, and guess what? We no longer care about that child's parents to care for them. Still undocumented, not pregnant anymore. Good luck to you. Oh, and by the way, I'd also love to talk about removing funding for feeding your kid at school. Absolutely must bring this child to term, but if you're undocumented, we're going to turn your health care off when that kid comes here, and we don't care if they eat either. And I've heard a lot of really, really, really personal stories today. And that makes sense, because this is a very, very personal issue. These are personal decisions that do not belong in the hands of anyone in this room unless you are making decisions about your own body. And lastly, I'll say, there was mention too of throwing political bombs, and, we can say whatever we want to say in the narrative of speaking to one another, but when Minnesotans follow the legislation that we write and introduce, and they do, because I get emails about things like this, and I have to reassure people that something this extreme is not going to pass through any committees. I have to reassure my constituents every day when we see bills like this that no, I promise you, we will defend your reproductive rights. This will not come to fruition, despite efforts from extreme politicians in Minnesota and across the nation. So is this a political bomb? Back and forth? I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that this bill and bills like it are a political bomb on the rights of Minnesotans.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Gottfried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is an intensely deep and personal issue that I know a lot of folks have deeply held convictions on and personal experiences with. And I am sorry to hear about the experience that Representative Schultz mentioned today and what Representative Smith mentioned today. It's heartbreaking, especially if it is in a scenario where you deeply loved and wanted to carry that child and bring it forth. And so we do need to talk about this with the sensitivity that it deserves. I want to go back to yesterday. It was a discussion about one of the bills, and I believe it was Representative West said something that really struck with me that I think is applicable in this context. And he mentioned it on our provision to ban prediction markets here in the state. He said that just because we don't like it, we decide to ban them. That doesn't get rid of them, that just puts it in the shadows. It's true here too. If we ban something, it doesn't stop it, just puts it in the shadows. And that's what would happen if this provision, this constitutional amendment, passed. It wouldn't stop abortion, it wouldn't stop terminating a pregnancy, it would just put it in the shadows and make a whole lot of people a lot more unsafe. There's statistics to back this up too. I'm not just saying this out of nowhere. So couple of status points, statistical points, infant mortality on average in states that have abortion bans of this level, and even lesser, have a 11% higher infant mortality rate than states that don't have these bans in place. And then probably one of the most extreme comparisons that we can kind of call upon is Texas, which has a near total abortion ban, similar to what would be in this particular law, has a maternal mortality rate 155% higher than in California. And so when we talk about these things, yes, we need to treat it sensitively. Yes, we need to share those personal stories, I think, as Representative Quam brought up, and I think those do have value. But we also need to look at the aggregate. We need to look at the totality of this and what it means for our society. And so I look at the language of this bill beyond just the statistical implications that it may have for both infant and maternal mortality rates within our state. And I look at the language itself, and I'm not convinced it provides the level of protection for folks that experience some of these exceptions that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle says it does. So, for example, if there is a right to life established, I would just ask if, I'm not asking anybody to yield or anything like that, but just it's something for us to consider. Can the mother be held liable for a miscarriage? Can the mother be held liable for using a substance or engaging in activities that cause a termination of a pregnancy or complicate a pregnancy to the point where it needs to be terminated if she did not know that she was pregnant? And this is very, very often the case when there are early on in pregnancies. You do not know that you're pregnant until later. And if there's a right to life established at the moment of conception, if that mother engaged in activities that complicated things to the point where that pregnancy needed to be terminated, could she be held liable under that? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. And, at the most extreme end of this, violation of this could be charged with murder. And it's important that we look at the bill language itself, to have this nuanced discussion as we're talking about an incredibly sensitive topic, to see what the implications of this bill languages are. And I don't think that's clear under this. One other thing that I wanted to raise, say something like this does go through and we have a near total abortion ban within the state. I want to talk about what happens after that child is born in some specific circumstances. It's unfortunate, but we need to address the topic of rape within this context. And, among some of the fundamental rights that the Constitution, that are enumerated within our Constitution, are the rights of parents to raise their children. And while, it's never been interpreted as an absolute legal privilege, courts really have exercised wide discretion in preserving this right and have historically ignored the reality that not all parents are deserving of this right. I will say, even though the family law system does have some protections in place to terminate parental rights for atrocities like abuse, like domestic violence, it really largely ignores what I would call an uncomfortable area of parental origin, and that is parental rights regarding children conceived by rape. And that is another question that needs to be asked. If there is a child that is brought forth, is born as a product of rape, does the rapist have parental rights over that child? And in this particular bill, there is no exception for abortions, for pregnancies that are caused by rape. And I ask these questions, again, I don't want to be insensitive, but I ask these questions because these questions must be asked when we are talking about a piece of legislation that has such broad, sweeping implications as this one does. There are a lot of feelings about this in this room. and I respect that. And I'm glad that we're having these conversations, not just because it's a, lobbing political bombs at each other or anything like that, as Chair Bennett said. But again, these are the sort of conversations that we need to be thinking about. These are the sort of questions that we need to be asking ourselves when we impose such a broad measure. And while I understand that the deeply held convictions on the other side of the aisle here may not view this as extreme, this as you put it, right to life, as extreme. What would be extreme is its application in law and the infringements on other rights that people have, and the huge amount of harm and unintended consequences that this sort of provision would have on our state, on the people in our state. And, I think every single one of us has a story that we could tell about a pregnancy that ended before we wanted it to. And I want to honor that space and hold the grief that there comes with that. And I will tell you, there are members of my family who have had abortions and have held a grief over that choice, especially if they were late and some complication arrived late into a pregnancy where they wanted to have that child. Anyway, I'm going to circle back to the beginning. There are a lot of things in the way that this bill is drafted that would leave huge amounts of unanswered questions within our state, within our society, that would have extreme impacts on the daily lives of people within our state. And I will reiterate what Representative West said in a slightly different context before I end this belabored speech, I should say. Just because we ban it does not mean that it will stop happening. It will just happen in the shadows, in a far less safe manner, in a way that harms far more people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Nobles, Representative Fogelman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the reasons that I ran for office was to protect the right to life. Every single solitary baby that is conceived is a gift from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I am very proud to say that on this floor today. I have had 2 children they are now grown adults. I also had 2 miscarriages. So I know the loss of the babies, and I know the joy of having a baby. The fact that the other side is saying that this is extreme is very hard to understand for me. Every child is a gift. And to punish a child because of bad choices just seems backwards to me. You would say you want bodily autonomy? Well, who is going to protect that child's bodily autonomy? That child is living and breathing, and it should be protected. I can't think of any greater thing that we can do on this floor today than to pass something like this for Minnesota. You talk about choices on the other side. This is a choice for our voters. This is why we come here, to let our voters have a voice. We are here for them, to advocate for them, and I'm going to advocate for the people in my district that constantly tell me how horrible it is that we have an extreme abortion policy in our state. Horrified that we can abort a child up to the day they are born. I do not know how anyone could do that with a clear conscience. So I hope today that we can look and say, we can assure our constituents that they can go to the ballot and vote on this. Then we can see how voters feel about the right to life. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Chisago, Representative Reimer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, it's been interesting. I learned a lot from all of you in this chamber, and learned a lot from Representative Hollins yesterday about the way that this process works. And for the people of Minnesota, the way that I look at this bill, no matter how you feel about abortion, is this bill has not gone through any process. We did not ask for this bill to be on the floor. In fact, it was Democrats who asked for this bill, and they seem to care about it so much that half of them, maybe more, are gone for this really important debate that we're having on abortion or lack thereof, or what our policy is in Minnesota. You know, Representative Liebling brought up a point, and, you know, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm wondering if Representative Liebling would yield for a question.
She will yield, Representative Reimer.
You know, Representative Liebling, you said that this bill would make criminals out of people, and I'm not sure in this process what people are you referencing when you say people?
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. So, because this bill says that if this was enacted, that every unborn child has a right to life, it means that if that life is ended, there would potentially be a murder charge. So in the stories that we've heard today, and thank you, I'm really glad you did ask this, and I think that Representative Gottfried touched on this, but I want to be very clear about it. Under this language, where you start out with the right to life in the Constitution, and then you have some exceptions, somebody has to decide whether those exceptions applied. So there would be a presumption that when a pregnancy is lost or an embryo is destroyed, that is a murder unless proven otherwise, that it is a homicide, I should say, unless proven otherwise. So we've heard some heartrending stories about miscarriages on this House floor. I know many of us have experienced them, or our family members have. It's a heartbreaking thing. And now just imagine you went through that with your family, and then suddenly there's a knock at your door, and you're going to be questioned about, was that really a miscarriage? Or was that something else? Because presumptively, under this language, the loss of that pregnancy is, you have now somebody is lost who had the, quote, right to life, unquote. And so somebody could be asking one of these families that's grieving this unintended loss to prove it. That's the problem with this. That is a fundamental problem, and why this invades your privacy. That is the last thing a family needs when they lose a pregnancy that they wanted. Or even when they felt they had to abort a pregnancy that they wanted, which happens a fair amount, much more than we'd like to think, for whatever reason, because of the health of the mother, it then becomes that family's task to prove that they had a valid reason under the Constitution, because that fetus had a quote-unquote right to life. So that's what I'm saying. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Representative Reimer.
Thank you, Representative Liebling. No, you didn't, because I asked what type of person can get pregnant, and you all won't answer that, because women get pregnant. Moms get pregnant. And you won't say it, and I understand why. It's birthing people, and we want to make sure that we're inclusive in that language, but I think Minnesotans see through that. And you know, it's interesting, because you brought up the right to life thing over and over again, and I think language is important in these bills. So even though this bill is unvetted, we haven't heard it in committee, and I think I'm probably a no on it, because I am so pro-life that I think these types of bills should have their day that work through the process. But I think language is important. and it got brought up before. So we're talking about preborn child recognized to have a right to life. That's what this bill or this constitutional amendment is saying. And it was said before, but what 10 of you signed on to uses the exact same language, but for a different entity. So I just wanted to read that one more time. House File 3899 says that it is the policy of this state to recognize the inherent right to life of uncultivated rice to exist. So we can have the debate on whether a preborn child has inherent life or not. You believe they don't, we believe they do. But I think what most reasonable Minnesotans, and I hope you're listening, because we have one party who believes rice has a right to life and doesn't believe that human beings have a right to life. How backwards is this? I hope Minnesotans can recognize this farce for what it is. Right now, we have a bill on the table that has gone unvetted, that we as Republicans did not bring up on this floor, but Democrats wanted to bring it up even though it didn't get vetted. And it is the same party who believes that rice has a right to life, but preborn children don't. So there's a lot of problems here. There's a lot of discussion to be had about these specific types of issues. I think most Minnesotans want some kind of reasonable metric or some kind of reasonable constriction on abortion. I think we can have that conversation, but it's not going to happen here on this House floor with a half-baked bill that Republicans didn't want to bring up. And we're ready. I mean, again, we talked about working your way through the process. This bill did not do that. But I find it especially interesting that we're having on the merit of the bill, utilizing the same language, the inherent right to life. You guys think a vegetable has it, but preborn babies don't. So I'll be a no on this bill, and it's not because I'm not pro-life, but it's because we need to have a broader discussion about what Minnesotans want and how we can best represent them in this really difficult, weighty conversation. And I hope you'll give this bill the same consideration, or a bill in the future the same consideration, that we need to have a broader conversation about this issue. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Carver, Representative Ream.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I wanted to make just a couple points here about this bill. One is that women often don't know they're pregnant until much later. And sometimes they don't know at all. They might go to the bathroom, have a miscarriage, and not know that they had been pregnant. So that's very common. So to say that life begins at conception really doesn't factor in all these people who go to the bathroom and have a miscarriage. All these people who don't realize they're pregnant. So to make it a crime for our body to have a miscarriage like that is really extreme. The other point I want to make is, after hearing some of our members talk about how it's so easy, this is such an easy bill, and that Minnesotans need to have their voices heard. That this would give Minnesota the choice to protect life. Well, we've heard day after day that there is a bill hiding somewhere in a drawer that would do just that. That bill is Senate File 4067, and that bill alone would save many lives. That bill would address the gun violence we have seen in this state and in this country for years, most notably last summer, in June, July, and in August. So if you want to talk about protecting life, let's bring that bill to this House floor so that Minnesotans' voices can be heard here. I would hope that we'd agree that the lives of the children, the people who died last year, the Hortmans, that their lives should be protected too, right?
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're on a very important order of business. That is House File 5084, and I would ask that members stick to that point.
I remind the body that we are currently on a motion to suspend the rules on House File number 5084. If members could keep their comments aimed at that motion. Representative Ream.
Okay, well, I'm talking about protecting life, and that's, I think, what we're debating here. How do we best protect lives? How do we best protect our constituents' lives? And I'm going to make it fairly short today. I don't think we need to hear long speeches about a bill that's not going anywhere, that hasn't been vetted, hasn't gone through committees. But I do want to quote something from a pastor down in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'll make a few editorial changes to it. But it's about the unborn. The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated. Unlike the incarcerated, addicted, mentally ill, or the chronically poor, they don't resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct. Unlike widows, they don't ask you to question patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money, education, housing, universal school meals, or childcare. Unlike immigrants, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love. If you want to claim you love Jesus, but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the mentally ill, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Todd, Representative Wiener.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Schultz, for telling your story. My heart goes out to you and your wife. And I don't generally share personal stories. But you see, my wife and I experienced the same thing. And as a father of 9, it's extremely difficult to see my wife go through that and to not be able to do anything to change it. Just to be there to support her, love her, hold her hand, and bury that infant that didn't make it, knowing we could have had 10 in our family. It's not easy. But it means that every life is precious. But I'll share another story. One that my wife and I have never told anyone else. You see, when we found out that she was pregnant with one of our children, the doctor said, I think we need to have a test done here. He said there might be an issue. So they sent us to a specialist. And when we went in to meet with them, they asked a few questions. Asked if I was the father, asked the mother, asked how many kids we had, and said, when do you want to schedule the abortion? And I was shocked. What do you mean, schedule an abortion? They said, well, that's what you're here for, isn't it? I said, no. What's going on? Well, you already have this many kids. Why would you have another? So we made a call to the doctor instantly, very much in shock, disturbed by what had been said. And they said, well, we feel like there might be mental health issues. So we said, we're going home. We're going to go home right now. And if we have to take another test, we'll take another test. And we went home and we discussed what was going to happen, what we were going to do to prepare ourselves. Everybody wants a healthy, happy baby. But here's a choice, supposedly, because the choice wasn't if the baby was going to live or die. The choice was how were we going to arrange our lives to care for that child. And as we waited the weeks to get the test, it came back that that child had nothing wrong with it. The doctor chose to say that we should have an abortion and should kill that child because we had had too many already. If we had listened to that doctor, I would have killed one of my sons. That's what we're dealing with right now. And it makes me think of the value of life, as this bill did. Thank you, Representative Davis, for writing this. I'm proud to be an author of this bill. It's been mentioned before. Representative Jacobs, Bennett, wild rice. We're talking about giving that a right. Eagle eggs, turtle eggs. What has more value? That turtle egg or a human life? That wild rice or a human life? An animal or my son's life? I think it's very easy to see. And if we can't value human life, then what are we? If we're willing to put more value on an animal than we are a human, what does that say about us as a society? And you see, at one time, the Democrat Party actually used to be pro-life. My representative, when I was a kid growing up, was a Democrat in my area that was pro-life. How far the Democrat Party has gone. And then this bill, a constitutional amendment, which we talk about defending democracy all the time. What is more democratic than putting that up to the voters? They get to decide. You are basically silencing the voice of Minnesotans. Why do you fear that? There will come a time in our society when we will look back at these days and see how many innocents we have slaughtered. With the negative birth rates in our country, there will come a time when we will say, what have we done to our future generations? Thank you, Ben, for bringing this bill forward. And I hope that we do have a constitutional amendment in this state and that the voters decide, because that's what should be done. Thank you.
Recognize a member from Goodhue, Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Quite frankly, I'm very, very happy and grateful to the Democrat Party for bringing this up on the floor today so that we can have this discussion. And to think that they would shame us or to make us feel bad that we want to ask for a constitutional amendment. Members, we've heard a lot of fear-mongering here today. We've heard a lot of what ifs, but it's not what this bill is. The bill simply is a constitutional amendment which would be put on the ballot for the citizens of Minnesota to vote. That's it, folks. It's very interesting to me because 2022, the Minnesotans will remember advertisement after advertisement of the same fear and rhetoric. This is a party driven by abortion. Driven by the death of babies. And it's sad. I truly, truly feel sad for the Democrat Party. In 2023, after the Democrat trifecta, we came in here and HF1 was the Democrats' #1 priority. HF1. And when I talk to people in my district today, they still do not understand what that bill compromises. They do not understand to this day what the Democrat trifecta did to the state of Minnesota. HF1, no guardrails, no limits, abortion up to birth. And frankly, I guess they're proud of that. Abortion up to birth. Pro-choice voters disagree. Pro-choice voters absolutely disagree that abortion should be allowed up to 40 weeks. But the elected Democrats voted yes. Abortion up to birth. No limits. It is amusing to me that you think it's extreme, that we are asking the citizens of Minnesota to decide. Because apparently the party, the pro-choice party, doesn't want to give you a choice. The pro-choice party is going to make all the decisions for you, Minnesota. There is no middle ground with this party. There's no purple in Minnesota anymore. It's their way or no way. You don't get to decide. They decided for you. Abortion up to 40 weeks. No guardrails. Abortion facilities not licensed. Well, that seems extreme. HF1 stripped parental consent for minors. Does that seem extreme, Minnesota? That seems a little extreme to me, especially in today when we have sex trafficking and we have minors going to have abortions with no parental consent. Seems pretty extreme to me. So the party that claims diversity, apparently you can't have diversity of thought. Apparently you can't have diversity of your own religious beliefs. So Minnesota, I am very, very grateful that we're having this conversation today because by far, most Minnesotans feel that the Democrat Party, the elected Democrat Party, have taken this state way too far to the left, way too radical. They stripped away reporting. Let's go on. HF1. Why would they strip away the reporting? So now we don't even know how many abortions are being performed. Seems kind of extreme, doesn't it? And to Representative Ream, who is not here anymore, it was very interesting when she's referring to the unborn, and then she said, and when they are born, we can forget about them. The public should ask the elected Democrats if that's what they mean when they stripped away the Born Alive bill, because that's what they did. And they forgot about our babies who survived, to be left to put aside, to die. So yes, Minnesota, I am happy to have this conversation all day long, and I am very, very proud to have my name on that bill, because you know what? Minnesotans disagree with the elected Democrats and how far left they have taken this state and radicalized us. Minnesotans disagree. We do not want to be the most radical state in the nation on abortion. And actually, I trust the citizens of Minnesota. I trust them to put it on a ballot to allow them to vote.
I recognize a member from Dakota, Representative Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm thankful that we brought this bill forward, or this urgency. Many of my colleagues have spoken and spoken very well, and I appreciate, again, bringing this forward. I'm honored to be an author on this bill. And one of the things that I ran on is to end abortion. I think it's disgusting, and it's vile, and it is murder. Moving forward with this gives Minnesotans an option. As Representative Altendorf pointed out very well, it gives Minnesotans a choice. So what are we afraid of? Let's give them that choice. Let's have their voice be heard. I grew up in Minnesota, and I'm proud to be a Minnesotan, but that's changed over the years. We used to be known as the land of 10,000 lakes. Now we're a laughingstock in many ways, whether it's fraud or now we're known as the land of 12,000 plus abortions every year and rising, because one party wants to push that narrative and continue the practice of ending the lives of the most vulnerable people in our society. And so I am absolutely happy and excited that they brought this forward. I hope we're going to get the votes that we need to pass this and give Minnesotans the choice so they can have their voice be heard.
I recognize the member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I've had a lot of accusations thrown at me during this time, and that's okay. It's a very extreme bill, I was told, over and over and over. So Minnesota, I guess I'm on trial before you. You decide if I'm extreme or not, because that's what I'm trying to do here, is let you decide on this issue. You see, this is a constitutional amendment where you, the people, decide. So I'll read it for you. An amendment to the Minnesota Constitution is proposed to the people. A preborn child has the right to life. A preborn child has the right to life. This section does not prohibit the provision of medical treatment necessary to save the life or preserve the health of a pregnant individual, or the removal of a non-viable or deceased preborn child, including in cases of miscarriage or ectopic pregnancy. So I just read it to you. You can now see that there were many false accusations made about this bill, just by simply reading it. There's probably no subject dearer to my heart than protecting innocent life. It's no secret I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian, and I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. And I love him with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. Proverbs 31:8, I'm about to really bare my heart with you. Open your mouth for the speechless and the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy. And to me, I can't think of someone more speechless than a human being in the womb who's robbed of their choice, who's robbed of their bodily autonomy, to me, they matter. I wasn't always a Christian. At 24 years of age, I had become so sick and tired of my life. And I was such a terrible person, and my wife was ready to divorce me, and I was an atheist. That was me. I was an atheist, and I got so depressed at times I'd just stare out the window. And a little bit earlier, before my wife and I got married, she had become pregnant, and I went to her and I asked her if she would be willing to get an abortion. That was me. And I thank God that she said no. Sorry, but this matters to me. This isn't a political issue for me. I am who I am. My district sent me here to represent them, and I was very clear and honest with them about what I believe. And they sent me here with an overwhelming response. This isn't political for me. This is life and death, and this is about the life of human beings. I gave my life to Jesus Christ at the age of 24 in a warehouse without reading a lick of the Bible, and I got filled with the Holy Spirit of God. That happened. And it changed my life. And it was God Almighty who revealed to me how important this issue is. And I make no apology for him or for who I've become. So Minnesota, you decide if that's extreme. That's just my story. That's what happened to me. And now I fight for those human beings, those little baby boy and baby girls. I fight for their bodily autonomy. I fight for their freedom of thought and the freedom to be able to one day maybe stand on this House floor and speak. But you see, we each only get one chance, one life, one spirit. One. And someone else makes that choice for them to snuff out their life forever, never even having a chance to fulfill their God-given destiny. Done. Over. Never to have that chance again. Minnesota is that extreme. Because I remember during the Democrat trifecta, when abortion was passed on this floor up to birth and arguably after, there was cheering and giddiness on the other side of the aisle. So I'll let you decide if that's extreme or not. They went home cheering for abortion up to birth and arguably beyond. And I left here in tears along with many of my companions. You decide if that's extreme or not. And I will tell you that these Democrats down here in St. Paul, they wouldn't even vote to stop post-birth abortions. That is a fact. You can go back and watch the tape yourself because it's archived. You tell me who's extreme. This is a conversation worth having, Minnesota, and I wanted to bring the conversation directly to you, the people, because a constitutional amendment lets you decide. God, thank you. Help us all to have a heart of compassion. And help us to have your perspective, heaven's perspective. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We heard yesterday that bills matter, that the bills that you sign on to matter, that the bills you introduce matter. And just a reminder about how extreme this bill is. Before you even know you're pregnant from fertilization, this would institute criminal penalties for doctors, criminal penalties for those seeking medical care, with no exceptions for rape, no exceptions for incest. Minnesotans have been told time and again that they don't have to worry, that their abortion rights are protected, that we have a Supreme Court decision that is in place. This bill is trying to undo that, and this vote will show Minnesotans who is on the side of criminalizing Minnesotans for seeking medical care and who is on the side of reproductive rights. Please vote no.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the motion to suspend the rules to bring up 5084. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Hudson. Hudson. Momani Hiltsley.
Momani Hiltsley, no.
Momani Hiltsley votes no. Rarick.
Go.
Rarick, aye.
Rarick votes aye. Hudson.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 52 yeas and 71 nays, the motion to suspend the rules does not prevail. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate refuses to concur in the House amendments to the following Senate file. Senate file number 4282, an act relating to forecast adjustments. The Senate respectfully requests that a conference committee be appointed therein. The Senate has appointed as such committee members Senator Kunish, Swazinski, Clark, and Rarig. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodern, Secretary of the Senate. Youakim moves that the House accede to the request of the Senate and that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 4 members of the House to meet with a like committee appointed by the Senate on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses on Senate File number 4282.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is the motion. We need to do some more work to make sure that our education policies and the finances benefit all the children of Minnesota. I ask for member support.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. Announcement by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announced the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on Senate File number 4282. Youakim, Noor, Krisha, and Schumacher.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. A message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House files. House File number 4239 and House File number 4240.
Announcements. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republicans, we will caucus in our caucus room following adjournment.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Sensor-Mura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to make an announcement that Speaker Demuth has 24 hours to report the bill from the Senate, Senate File 4067, which is the comprehensive package on gun violence prevention. If Speaker Demuth does not report this bill by 5 p.m. tomorrow on Thursday, May 14th, I, along with other members of this body, will engage in an overnight sit-in here in the chamber. We will be doing this. We will be doing this for the community of Annunciation, the parents and families of Harper Moisky and Fletcher Merkel, and for everyone across Minnesota who has lost someone to gun violence. Again, I rise today to make the announcement that Speaker Demuth has 24 hours to let us do something about guns. If she does not, I will begin my sit-in, and I invite my colleagues on any side of the aisle and on the right side of history to join me. Speaker Demuth, what are you so afraid of? Let us vote, or we will sit. Thank you.
Further announcements. I recognize, do you have an announcement, Representative Long?
I do, Mr. Speaker.
I would love to hear it.
Democrats are going to be caucusing in our caucus room following adjournment.
Any further announcements? I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 14, 2026.
Representative Niska moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 14, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. Representative Niska.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Niska moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 11 a.m. Thursday, May 14, 2026.